I'll get the soccer mid.
We playing for picks?
Yeah. I mean, it worked last round. We got playing.
Even last round wasn't bad. It was just a bad mid round. One stairs.
I'm watching it. They picked up the op. Got smoke mid. Go for sniper.
I can smoke on.
Flanking us.
Hey, if they're pushing everything, should we just 2-1-2 and just like work fix?
Yeah.
They like to push from behind. They did that the last two rounds.
I think they're dropping underpass.
Yeah.
Yeah, they do rush it.
Do we want to try to squeeze that guy? Like mid and B?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll go B.
Now is the time.
Decoys out.
Smoke!
Wait for my mid window smoke.
They're gonna have an op sniper.
Get popped.
Watch the B push.
I'm gonna watch cat from you.
Nice.
Throwing flashbang.
We could take this back around to A ramp and I think we're good.
We'll mark it. 2 mark or 2 B.
One flanked us. One flanked us. Hey.
Flashing green.
Up down B. 2 dead B.
We can go through connector to A. One flanked A.
B. There's only 1 B.
Oh no, that keeps happening, bro.
Last one's market. He's really low, I think.
Dead.
There's an op bench if someone wants
Con,
to run
I think.
for it. No need to peek.
I could drop an AK for somebody. Same thing.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'll smoke off connector.
Smoke!
Wait for my smoke.
Smoke!
One connector.
Con.
I'm throwing a grenade!
One down A ramp push. Nice. Was that a B push?
Throwing smoke!
We got 1 B. Where's the other one died?
Alright, so we got them split right now. One mid, one A, one B.
Flashbang!
What do y'all want
We
to
should
do?
just rush a site.
Let's go B.
Yep.
Let's go B.
Alright. Give me a second to catch up.
Flashbang!
I think.
I'm throwing fire!
Don't worry. Flash. Sorry.
Could be con. I think he's con.
Market clear.
Never mind. He's market. Probably saving. He should save.
I'm gonna push him.
He's A site now. Looked like he was going on Palace, maybe? Oh,
Yeah, he's
Palace.
Inside?
Yeah.
I'm throwing a flashbang!
Terrorists win. Missing.
Do the same thing. I feel like
Uh,
they're still antsy.
Green, you can return that AK if you want. I've been waiting.
Let's go, let's go.
Thank you.
Throwing smoke.
Nice.
Do you smoke window?
I smoke connector.
Let me smoke window.
Underpass or
Yeah,
cat?
smoke
Cat.
window if I can.
This one cat.
He had an off somewhere in window, I think. Might be jungle because I killed
He's
him.
close, cat.
Flashbang.
My eye. Nice.
Cat's dead.
I think 2A, 1B. Or 1 sniper, 1B.
Grenade out.
They're gonna rotate through there, Anthony. Stay.
I'm watching.
Still in there. Had an off, I think.
Looking behind him.
Outmarket.
Get there
Door.
quicker, Anthony.
On site.
Oh, shit.
It's planted for the cat.
Oh my god.
Nice, you got it.
Good job, dude.
Woo.
Anybody see Anthony with that window?
Yeah, my
That thing
control
was
key
giving him a
got,
hell
like,
of a time.
fucked up.
Let's show them who we are.
Who wants what? I'm thinking 2A, 2B, and I'll play A and like float connector for mid.
I'll watch it.
I can go B.
Okay.
Move it, son.
A flashes.
I hear it. Underpass.
They're coming A.
Grenade.
The apps.
Okay.
Yeah, I got one. Other one's tagged. He's van, I think.
That's gotta be bomb.
Close, close.
I got 1B. There's one more on van. I didn't see bomb though.
This last guy, 3v1.
Bomb at T-spawn.
We got bomb and spawn.
Cat.
That's a lot of blue on that.
Yeah, buddy.
Right on, you're right on.
What's the backside look like?
It's not as good. It's like half, but I just opened it a couple days ago.
I ain't. You know how much that one's worth? I mean, it's a good.
No
tab.
idea. Yeah, I have no idea what it is. I want to have it valued, but I don't know how to go about it.
Gear up. We aren't going on a windy walk here. Laying down smoke.
Flash A. They pushed up through smoke.
Grenade out. Throwing flashbang.
Bombs down in halls. Watch the lurker.
Flashbang.
The whole bloody thing. So, quickest way to work that out is fire up something like Reaver Tuner. Look at your GPU usage. Is it comfortably below, say,
Can
95%?
you see bomb from there?
And then play
Yes.
around with the quality settings and work out what's happening, like lower
He's in here.
resolution.
With bomb.
Does that change anything? And work out whether you are CPU or GPU limited and to what degree. So once you've worked that out, you're seeing your new 4070
this.
The more
Ti
time that goes
Super.
by.
It's at like 50% utilization, and you try increasing the resolution does help with utilization, but you still can't max it out, and you can't achieve the frame rates you want. You do a bit of research, what game you're playing. This card should be able to achieve that FPS. So you've worked out you need a CPU upgrade, right? Now, you don't need to work out what CPU is the best CPU for 1440p or 4K because it's not a thing. It's just not a thing. What you need to do is you need to go,
I'm just gonna flow over
well,
faster.
you know, $300 is what I typically spend on my CPU, and that's what I want to spend on my CPU. Okay, great. Now you go to reviews, and you work out which $300-ish CPU delivers you the best performance. And you determine that by looking at CPU limited testing.
It's one down mid.
And that's it. You don't go, oh, well, the $300 CPU is 20% slower than a 9800X 3D. Should I spend another, you know, $200 US? Because then it's a different price tier, and then you've got to work out what the best CPU is. That price tier. So
I think the first question that most people want from a review, and again goes into the whole, this is what a review is doing, is they want the number that's shown to equal the performance that they get in their system.
That's one site.
So there's, even with things like GPU reviews, there's at times not a willingness to compare percentage differences between parts. It's very much, I want the review to show the number I will get.
It's in the corner.
And so even with GPU reviews, you kind of see the reverse situation where people are asking you, oh, you shouldn't be testing an RTX 4060 on a 7800X 3D. You should be testing that on a lower tier CPU because people don't pair $500 CPUs with $300 GPUs. You get the reverse because people want the exact configuration that they're playing to get the number that they're getting.
We needed one.
Whereas how we're suggesting that you should interpret reviews is, firstly, percentage differences are more important than the actual number that you're getting. So if you've chosen a price point you're paying, don't be thinking, oh, let's have a look, 120 or 150. It's like, which part is 20% faster, 30% faster? You should be using the data that we're providing so that you can make those performance comparisons. So we're not going to give you all the percentage differences in every single review. You might need to do some calculations. And so with CPU reviews, I think there's a misconception that CPUs work like GPUs, in that with a GPU, if you lower the resolution, your performance increases. So generally speaking, 4K, you turn it down to 1080p, FPS goes up. CPUs don't work like that. If you're CPU limited and you play at 4K and you reduce the resolution to 1080p, in most games you will see a negligible performance difference. You might see a small reduction or a small improvement in FPS from the lower resolution, but generally speaking, it doesn't make a difference. And that's because CPUs are not the primary thing. They're not resolution dependent. The reason why games are CPU limited is not due to the amount of pixels that are trying to be rendered in the game. It's due to things like the game logic, all those sorts of things. It's a completely different method of rendering. And so I think this is what confuses a lot of people, is that people think that, well, I'm buying a CPU for 4K gaming. Therefore, performance will be much lower on the CPU, so I don't need to worry about as much the CPU because, you know, it's a different resolution. Like, surely I'm going to be more on the GPU side and things like that. Whereas I think what those people fail to understand is that CPUs provide a baseline. And this is what you've been really trying to get to in your sort of videos, talking about why you test CPUs at 1080p and why CPUs also matter for 4K gaming, is that the CPU sets the maximum frame rate that you'll be able to get in a game. And so all the decisions around the GPU, the performance, the quality settings, the games you play, all that sort of thing is set by the CPU as a very hard limit. There is little that you can do in games to change that sort of limit. Whereas with the GPU, lots of things you can change. Resolution, quality settings. There's many more levers you can pull to adjust the level of output performance that you get. With CPU, if the CPU can do 120 FPS, that's it. That's the limit. It's very unlikely you'll be able to turn down settings and put that to 140 FPS. The CPU just does 120. That's it. That's what you're getting. And so with your examples, we're talking about people upgrading their systems and things like that. And you're having to figure out, like, oh, you know, I'm only getting 60 FPS in this game. I would love to be getting 120 FPS. You might determine that you need a faster GPU. So then you buy the faster GPU that's good for 120 FPS. Like, you've watched the reviews in the game that you play, you know you're going to be getting double the performance. But then it turns out that the CPU you bought is capped at 100
If you go
FPS. You're
high, like,
never going to get
yeah,
120
speak when
FPS
they
no
get
matter
there.
what GPU you put in. And this is where people can make mistakes by looking at those
And-
1440p benchmarks. Is that if you look at the 1440p benchmark and all CPUs are at 80 FPS, you will never figure out the limits 100 FPS. You'll
Yeah.
upgrade your GPU in search of 120 FPS. If the 100 FPS limit's exposed, you've wasted money on the GPU. You should have upgraded the CPU. And that's exactly why you should be looking at 1080p benchmarks, because they find the limit, they find what your performance can be, and so that tells you everything that you need to know.
Everything's so quiet.
Yeah,
They're ready
the
to take
inverse of that
something.
is you could have, in that scenario, lowered your resolution
Connector.
or lowered your quality settings, and performance doesn't
Connector.
improve because
one
that
app.
cap, as you say, was set by the CPU. And it straight away tells you
Another one stairs. Last guy
you've
stairs.
significantly lightened the GPU load.
Sandwich
and
at A.
performance doesn't improve. And a clear indicator that there is some other kind of system bottleneck, usually a CPU bottleneck. But then also adding to
20
Get his
seconds.
and
ass.
this is why I say step one, work out. Do you need a new CPU?
That was a nice drop.
Not the reviews. I'm not trying to convince you
Really clean.
that your CPU sucks and you need a 9800X3D. I'm merely showing you what the 9800X3D has to offer relative to other CPUs. Step one, work out, do you need a CPU?
Yellow, take this AK.
Step two, how much would you like to invest in that CPU
Thank you.
upgrade? And work that out. And then the other component to the CPU upgrade and why it's good to know the actual gaming performance difference between the CPUs is because you're not keeping the CPU for 10 minutes. You're not going to upgrade the CPU with the next video game that comes out that's more demanding. You're not wanting to upgrade
They're throwing smoke spray.
Throwing fire.
if you have to upgrade the GPU, as Tim's saying, in 6 months.
One app.
To a much faster one, and then you find out, oh, that CPU upgrade,
Throwing a
I didn't
grenade.
pick the best CPU.
At least 3
apps.
apps.
Performance. If I had that extra 20% performance, I wouldn't need to upgrade my CPU. So you want to get the best value.
Okay, this is distraction today.
Performance CPU at a price you're willing
Just
to
know that
pay.
they're light. They had 2 guys today. Take this.
Because it will go. It will
You
last
could
for
smoke.
longer.
Bench.
To leverage the
He's tagging.
1080p.
The
At
field.
some point in time, that performance difference
Bench
will
or
Okay.
realize. So, if you bought a 5800X, or if you had the option of buying a 5800X or a 5800X, I think in some instances it's faster. I'd have to look at the latest data.
What?
But it's substantially faster. Now,
That sucks.
If you should just stuck it, I think you would have had.
It
Yeah,
was
I
my
should've-
fault. If I had a kid,
3D was
I think I
initially
would have
released
been
and
better.
admittedly it's quite a bit more expensive.
Yeah, I should have stuck it
That's
and you
nice.
should have looked
But a
for
lot
that
of people
guy.
would have said the
That
5800X3D is
no
not
scope
worth
was
it
insane.
because at 1440p Ultra
Do we want to push
or
mid on them?
4K Ultra
I
with
can
my
throw 2
GPU,
flashes up
there's
mid.
only
You
like
guys
a
can bum
10%
rush out
improvement,
connector.
so
We
it's
can
not
probably
worth
catch 2 of them off guard
whatever.
since we're splitting up.
Let's say it was 50% more expensive.
Alright.
Which admittedly,
Wait, so you want us to push connect?
Everybody
their
push
ratio
connector to
you
mid,
have to
and
work
I'm gonna
out.
go window and throw 2 flashes.
I'm gonna go under.
Fast forward to
You're good.
today,
Do your thing.
and you play a game like Starfield,
Later.
Hogwarts Legacy,
First flash coming.
what are all the other more Wukong's not a good example. That's not
Second flash up.
But if you play one of the many
Nothing else,
very
nothing deep.
CPU limited
Right.
modern AAA titles, plenty coming up.
Get an AK for one.
One
Yeah.
going in.
You will find today that the 5800X3D under real world conditions
Flash.
is much faster. Especially over that period of time upgrade to
One
the
pallet.
GPU.
Triple.
Find that difference. So
Yeah, I think
There's-
people
Pallet.
go
through.
1 ramp. Flanking him ramp. Fast.
Last
People
palace.
get caught up on
Dead.
Good job, guys.
Nice.
price.
Big
Because
round.
I think
There's an AK ticket booth if you want it.
I'm trying to understand how much
It's an
do I
AK.
need
It's
to
an
spend
AK.
$300? Do I need to spend $200?
You
Do I
like
need to
spend
spend
what?
$100? Like, and so people try and use those GPU limited benchmarks to justify spending as little as possible. Basically, they sort of go and they look at the charts and they're like, okay, well, there's no real performance difference between the $500 CPU and the $200 CPU, so I'll just buy the $200 CPU. So they'll kind of do the reverse of what you're suggesting. They're looking at the wrong sort of numbers. But if you're struggling to figure out the dollar number that you should spend, all you have to be thinking about is what performance do I want to be capped at? very simple. Like,
There's that. Sorry to interrupt you.
Oh,
But you can also work out
B.
the value based on the cost per frame, which is why we include that.
B.
yeah.
So if you're like
Amber.
under these more CPU limited scenarios,
One's right to the right,
9800X 3D.
Tight.
And
One
yeah,
van,
the
one
average
outside.
frame rate lowers by almost 50
And one
FPS,
van.
or just over 50 FPS. There's not,
Van tag.
for a lot of
He said we're
gaming
turning it.
scenarios, there's not a huge amount of difference. There's probably going to be less of a difference at the resolutions I'm playing, and I can spend half as much money.
They gotta
Now,
save their money, Ninja that.
in the future, as I'm saying, those cars become more commonplace. But you've spent less than half as much in. It's always. This applies to everything. Sorry, I completely hijacked.
I thought you had a kid. I'm sorry. It
Only
was
buy the best of the best
I don't know.
premium flagship
Bad
products
call by me.
if you have the money, or the means, or the justification to do so. Okay, however it is, however it works in your world.
yeah, it works.
If you're like,
You wanna try
wanna
pushing
spend a
middle on
stupid
him?
amount of money
I'll
on
throw
this
2
thing,
flashes.
and yes, it will last.
We
a bit
got that
longer. I
guy
think I talked
isolated
about
last
it on
time.
the podcast with the 1080 Ti.
Okay.
You guys want to
Someone
push
else
out
It'll
can
connector?
last longer, but it won't last.
Yeah,
longer
everybody
as a
push up
high-end
connector.
product.
Yeah.
So my
I like
advice
that.
is always buy within your means, as long as you're getting a good value product. But spend what you're comfortable spending.
Second
And if
flash.
you're comfortable spending $200 US on a CPU,
Flashes, eh?
900X 3D doesn't.
Go back,
exist.
eh?
Like if you're
That's
buying a
real.
car and you're spending $40,000, the $80,000 cars don't exist. Ignore them. It's just noise. Buy within your budget.
Maybe stairs.
One's connector.
$200, we're saying get a 7600X, not
One
a
house.
12600X, because the 7600X is much better value with what it offers. And it's the same thing, like, you wouldn't buy, you might go, oh yeah, but the Core i9 12100K has been $600 and now it's in the $200 range. It's only, if I stretch my budget by like $70, I could get, you know, 1200K.
Oh, you need to call timeout.
You're spending substantially more
No, we're good.
for the same gaming performance.
I think we,
So although
oh,
it sounds
we
great
need a
having
timeout.
A Core i9,
I don't
you're better
know.
off with the
He said he needed.
7600X.
I don't know.
Oh, that's fine.
And this
That's
is
fine.
what the cost per frame stuff
Alright.
all
Oh,
shows.
I didn't
So
know. I saw purple was AFK. I'm not sure.
I like to think we bring it all together in the review to show you what the best value. And the 9800X 3D is mid-tier. It's mid-tier in terms of value. It is effectively worse value.
We buying up this
at
round?
these heavily CPU limited benchmarks than the 9700X.
Either that or force
It's
stroke.
worse value, much worse value. than
Nah,
7700X.
let's buy it. Let's buy it.
So
Alright.
if our review,
Just
if
gonna,
that information was absent
send
from our
the,
review, I
apps
guess
early.
you could make
See
sort
if
of
we
that
can hide.
argument that. But we're not trying to upsell you on a 9800X.
I say we
we're
push
just-
mid again.
We're showing you
They
that it's
ain't
actually
really doing
not-
shit in mid, and it's
not
usually down to
particularly
one
great
guy.
value compared to those cheaper parts. But if you want
But
the best of the best,
whatever you guys
and
wanna do.
compare
You
it
guys wanna
the
go back to
other
212?
best of the best, or
Yeah,
best
that's just
class
like
type,
side.
top tier
Okay.
flagship.
I'll smoke.
type
I'll smoke A
devices,
round.
It is worth buying. So, sorry.
Yeah, I mean, I think that definitely applies to quite a few buys. If you want the value part, look at the cost per frame graph. I still think there are people who are very unsure on how much money they want to spend on parts, so they're not necessarily in like a budget category or a high end. They don't really fit into a category. It's like more just they're trying to figure
There's
out. They
two
might
bottom
have
A RAM.
built a PC before. They don't really know like
I'm just hiding
how much
here.
you can allocate on that part or whatever. In which case, again, like my
Two
recommendation,
A RAM,
if
maybe
you're not
3.
sure on your
Somebody throw a
budget, you
flash over
haven't
here.
Decided how much to spend. on
fake.
You have to sort of think like,
No.
well, the lower
Nice.
tier parts are going to be better value, but they're not going to be as performant. The higher tier parts are going to be less good value, but they're
You know
going
when
to
to
be
buy it.
faster. So it's just
Well, I
about
can
thinking
buy it
about
if you
that
want.
limit that you want to go with, really. Like, there's no
Before
good
you-
answer to that problem.
Yeah.
But the answer I know for sure is not the answer, is looking at GPU limited benchmarks. GPU limited benchmarks
confused
should
kids.
not be what is determining the amount that you spend on a CPU. You should be still looking at what is the ultimate performance that these parts can bring, and then figuring out where your limit is, like what you're comfortable with, even if theoretically you're not going to actually achieve that performance in the real world performance, whatever.
They're smoking
This
If you're
one,
Danny.
right?
comfortable with this level of performance, that level of performance is available at this price. That's how you start your price point. Yeah, that's it. Not looking
At least two.
benchmarks and go, these CPUs are the same, therefore I'll buy the cheapest one.
And that's
Because again, you just don't know what you'll be doing in the future, and you should always be trying to buy the best product at the
Nice.
price that you've ultimately.
One down at 8 holes.
yeah. And I know even in the section of this podcast
Oh,
is
maybe.
on YouTube, there'll be people who are arguing that we're wrong. And we
Watch
don't.
a hole in there. Watch your connector.
Top mid with bomb.
It's,
Oh yeah, all three
there'll even be
minutes.
arguments that, like, for the newer buyers, like, it's good to see that you don't have 3D.
Is he
and
low or
stuff
high?
like that,
Up on
but
cat.
They were low.
Yeah,
No, they were
Okay.
low.
it's worse showing GPU
I think they're trying to go up the
limited
cat now.
benchmarks. That is more of a trap, right? If you accidentally spend
There you go.
for the game you're playing and you buy a 90 X3D, you've not been screwed over. Like, it's going to ensure that you have an amazing gaming experience now and well into the future. But another example, and I might even make a video doing this because this could be a fun experiment. So if I picked, let's just go with 3 CPUs, right, off the top of my head. I pick 3 CPUs, and I don't tell you what they are, okay? And I benchmark them in games that are a few years old at 1440p and 4K. And I do so in a similar vein to the way that Linus Tech Tips did it. So heavily GPU limited, or just GPU limited benchmarks, okay? And the CPUs are called CPU 1 or CPU A, CPU 2, CPU 3, right? And one of them costs $230, one of them costs $210, and the other one's $230. And they all deliver the exact same performance. One of them is an 8000 series part, one of them's a 5000 series part, and one of them's a 7000 series part. I did that out of order because I'm just trying to confuse you. Which one do you buy, Tim? They're all the same performance. You're a novice buyer. What are you going to buy? Do you buy the 8000 series part?
Well, you just buy the cheapest one, wouldn't you?
Well, it's only $20 difference. So the 5000 series part's $230, the 7000 series part's $210, and the 8000 series part's $230. So they're all much of a muchness. Like, the cost essentially works out to be nothing. So you're sitting there going, okay, well, the price is much the same, the performance is much the same. I get the newer thing, right? That would be my logic. Is that going to be the logic of most people?
Yeah, I mean, I was sort of under the assumption that you hadn't revealed which of the CPUs
No,
was
you don't know-
which generation or whichever. So
Oh,
if you're just
okay,
going
well-
CPU 1, 2, and 3
Okay,
at
yeah,
those
fair
prices,
enough.
it's like
Yep.
there's no information to go on at all. So it would just be like a lotto, effectively.
Yeah, I guess in
But
that
if you're
sense,
saying
yeah,
that
you're right. You would pick the cheapest. So if the only information revealed was the generation, let's say.
Yeah, then you
I
get
mean,
the newest generation.
Ultimately, where I'm going with this, I skipped a step. Ultimately, where I'm going with this, I'll actually tell you what the CPUs are. And again, if you're a novice builder, it's probably not going to mean too much to you, okay? But, okay, so step one, you're absolutely right, sorry. You pick the cheapest CPU, okay? So, in this sense, that actually works out to be probably of benefit. I could have come up with a different combination of CPUs, mind you, like there's limitless examples here. But let's say the other bit of information is the CPU model. So one's like an 8600, so that would be like the 8600G, so an 8000 series Ryzen processor, which if you're a novice builder, the assumption would have to be that that's better than a 7000 series or a 5000 series processor. I think that makes sense. So at the moment, the 8600G is $230 US. The 7600X is $210, and the 5700X 3D is $230. Now, of those CPUs, I would actually recommend the cheapest one, which is the 7600X. So you would have picked wisely if you had have gone with the cheapest processor. But if you were to go off model names, 8000 being better than 7000, then you might get the 8600G.
But you could just claim they're all the same. Like, in a theoretical scenario, you just say, well, they're all about the same price. Generally, you would just buy the newest model, the 8000 model.
Well, it doesn't really matter. Essentially, you're going in blindfolded, right? Or at the very least, heavily misguided. So you've got 3 CPUs, 3 different generations, 3 different names, 3 very different CPUs, the way they go about doing things. Similar price points, very different gaming performance. The 5700X 3D and 7600X are probably the most similar. But I guess my point is, if you test them at 45 or 60 FPS or even 70 FPS, if that was to say be the cap at 4K ultra type settings, the conclusion is they're all much the same. So just get whichever one's the cheapest in your region, or realistically probably buy the new one because it's the new one. But I'm pretty confident if you do those benchmarks, the 8600G is going to be quite a bit slower than the 7600X, and it's going to bottleneck you much earlier. So it might be an interesting video to test those three CPUs in games from a couple of years ago at the 1440p 4K GPU limited benchmarks, and also see what how they would have compared back then at, say, 1080p, which I'm sure we already have the data for, and then make that comparison today with even more demanding games with maybe a slightly higher end GPU using reasonable quality settings, and just see. Because I like, how many frames per second is an 8600G going to be in Starfield? I actually don't have to know. It wouldn't be good.
Not more than double digits.
No, well, a 7600X does 100 frames on the dot, basically, 82 for the 1% lows.
Yeah,
5800
the doubles.
The 5800X 3Ds, well, the 5700X 3D would be more like 90 FPS. I've got to think the 8600G would be slower than
Where are we going?
So
Yeah.
that means if you bought the 8600G today, it would be substantially slower than a 7600X in a game like Starfield. But I'd have to do that testing. But that's just one random example I've plucked out of thin air. So there's probably some better CPU matchups that you could go back a couple of years and pick two CPUs of roughly similar value. But again, as I said, this applies to CPUs at price ranges as well. There might be a CPU that's $50 or $60 more that you didn't consider because you're not paying $50 or $60 more for no extra performance. But then you get a year or two down the track, and then this thing ends up being 30% faster.
It's kind of lit.
You probably wouldn't have to spend the extra money, because then
I think the GPU limited benchmarks almost always get people to buy a slower, cheaper CPU. You're not looking at a GPU limited benchmark and being like, hey, 9800 XUD is for me. It's definitely convincing people to buy a slower part. The question is, how bad of a decision is that in general? And I think that sort of testing definitely shows that. If you're looking at the time, 2 or 3 years ago, those GPU limited benchmarks, you definitely would have been misled, because the performance that you see a couple of years later is going to be different.
Long again?
The real differences between the parts are going to be exposed more, even at realistic settings. But yeah, like, I totally agree with you when it comes to, it's not that the 1440p and 4K data is inaccurate or wrong. Like, it's correct data, it's accurate data. However, showing that can be worse than not showing. It's like a data
it's misleading at
presentation
best.
thing.
It is absolutely misleading at best.
It goes beyond misleading, though. It's like it's worse, in my opinion. You've got someone listening to a review who's very interested in the FPS number.
One's behind you guys
The
alone.
person's going to ignore the better data. They're going to focus on the bad data. Whilst,
That
again,
one's lit as fuck.
accurate, it's bad. It's worse for the video, it's worse for the presentation to have it there, because we're trying to, I guess, like, encourage people to look at the data properly, to sort of look at things that make the most sense for this testing.
When a split
we
cat
can show
one.
in reviews all sorts of different things that are ultimately irrelevant to the CPU and its performance and various different things.
I'll go
But we
cat.
want to be focused and make sure that the takeaway that you have from a review is the important things. And if we're clogging up the review with all sorts of other stuff, they could potentially be that aren't worth being swayed on. Yeah, that does it. We have a lot of discussion. Like, how many times have you thought about how we present things, like the benchmark, how they're visually presented to make it easy for people to read and understand things. And we get a lot of people asking us to show things like frame time plots as opposed to looking at average FPS and 1% loads, because the thinking is that the frame time chart, which you see all the different types and numbers, averages don't necessarily show you. That's definitely true, but I personally, and I think a lot of people, find it extremely difficult to read an FPS frame time chart. Like, they are just unbelievably difficult to understand the performance differences between products when you look at that sort of chart, which is why we don't show them. Because, at least in my opinion, it's kind of worthless information. Like, it's not worthless information, but it's not very useful. If getting information easily, quickly, that you can look at a glance and figure out what's better is the whole goal of our channel at Hardware Unboxed, and why we present our in the way that we're presenting. So if we're showing you charts that are not useful, they're accurate, but they're not useful, they may have a product that's actually going to lead you to buy a product that's worse. We're going to omit the data.
Be cat inside.
Like, you talk about this a lot, but I don't know, it seems like for one reason, why don't you show this? Why don't you show that?
Maybe that was mid, I don't know.
So
Yeah.
Don't touch my AK.
People say like being condescending or patronising, it's a bit mind-numbing, but you're really just not understanding what it is. There's really no. While it would be I get it, right?
Okay.
While it would be lovely to say, here's my game. If I stick this CPU in, how much better will it be? And then if I stick in this CPU that costs a bit more, how much better will it be? And then I can work out which one I want. I get that, but that is, while that would be the most optimal way to go about it, the reviews aren't designed or can't cater to your exact specific use case, because you play Space Marine at a certain resolution with or without certain upscaling technologies enabled, with certain quality settings, because you're happy with a certain frame rate. So what CPU will offer you the best value to achieve that frame rate depends. But then it also depends, like, as you said, the future thing. We're not saying like we're buy for the future or future proofing or anything like that. But really, you want to get the best processor at a certain so you can go and find out
Pushing long
what
doors.
performance,
He's hurt, though.
you know, the CPUs are capable of delivering in Space Marine at 1080p, and go, well, I would like that performance. I would like 100 FPS, not 80. So the ones that can't deliver 100 FPS are naturally out, and then you work your way up from there. Which I'm repeating myself, but it really is a very simple concept, and ultimately what you know is how they actually differ in how the CPU. To determine CPU performance, you need to look at CPU performance. I know it's wild, but that's the situation. And
yeah, let's be rush.
yeah, I'm not sure what more to say about it. I know that there's no way to head off all the different arguments around this subject. But I guess on a final note, the thing that I find most frustrating about this, and I guess this is just
Flashing.
or just online, is that
He likes to rush.
I'm interested in I don't go to a car forum where there's like mechanics and guys that do this stuff day in, day out and be like, oh, but you're wrong because my opinion. You know what I mean? Like, I'll go and listen to what experts, and I'm not, we never really claim to be experts, but we're probably a lot of people that talk about this subject. I go and listen to what they have to say and go, okay, and then I might get the opinion of another mechanic, and then I might get the opinion of
Window.
someone else. And if
Two of them
all
are
of
both
them,
good at
if like 97% of them are saying the same thing, they're handling it in the same manner, then I'm probably like, well, that seems pretty conclusive. That's how they're doing it. And if you go to any of the top tier tech websites, you go to the other hardware Canucks that I spoke of, and they're all testing in this way. I mean, right away that would tell me something. I'd be like, oh, well, you know, maybe the way I want to see it presented isn't actually the best way to give me that information, or maybe I'm not actually getting what I think I'm getting by viewing that information. The guys that there'd be so many. I see the trap as well. There's YouTubers that test at 1440p and 4K, and we have done that ourselves. Again, I did briefly as sort of a trial period because it was just an overwhelming amount of people that were requesting to give the viewers what they want. To the point where I'm like, we're actually contributing to the problem here. And I do really believe it's more harmful than anything else. It's misleading at best, is the way I've phrased it multiple times. So I made the decision to stop doing it a little while ago. You know, people are upset about that, but I'm sticking to it. I'm not. It's kind of like, I know it's a situation where like I think I know best for you, but in this situation, my 20+ years of experience and seeing how these things over time and how these things are moving forward and what impact that has on the products, I know I'm
Tunnels.
We're not because we think our way is the best way. It's actually been a long-term established way of testing, and everyone who knows their stuff does it. So again, that should tell you something. That should cause pause before you go to the comments.
Wanna push cat?
You're wrong, and then give an explanation that paints a picture where you have absolutely no idea what you're talking about. So, but again, it's the internet. That's going to happen.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's just we don't decide these things on a whim. It's not. It's not like we're lazy for not showing you the data because we can't be bothered testing it, or we present it in a certain way because we just randomly decided to do it that way. It's, you know, we have refined it.
One watching cat.
Relevant review. Like there's just.
And we also, if you're like, oh, but people who don't know or they're new or whatever, it's like, yeah, okay, well, the reviews would be 5 hours long if we're but we've dedicated hours of content to some of the terrorists win. And I often link to those. It's in the video description of the 9800X3D review. There are 3 videos that come at it from almost 3 different angles that try to explain to you what it is you should be looking out for, historically why this has worked out well, you know, going off this sort of guidance. I don't know what more I can do. But anyway, it's just an ongoing thing. But I think on our channel, I just see those comments and, you know, just move past them. But I just felt really bad for the guys at Harvey Canucks that were just copping a fair bit of an unjust amount of abuse for it. Some sort of subject has done the right thing by their viewers.
Our side.
Yeah. It's a difficult one because I think maybe some people in that example will call up with, you know, we have criticised 720p testing in the past, but in some circumstances,
not aggressive. Like I don't really care about it. Like it's not. It was one way or the other. It's
I think you can show what you are trying to show at 720p at 1080p. Like in most circumstances, that has been possible.
Especially with modern GPUs, I've seen multiple instances where the 4090 is actually slower when you start to lower the resolution below 1080. Like you just can't feed the cores enough information.
I don't know, play for picks, sort of I guess.
With the higher core count CPUs, it just becomes inefficient. How it's going, which sounds weird, but it's definitely a thing, and it definitely happens. How often? Hard to say. But yeah, I mean, we found an 11% uplift. Hardware Canucks only found an 11% uplift when they went down to 720p. So it must be that either the sample of games we're using or the way that we're testing them is more CPU demanding than the way they're doing it. And I've tried to cull games that are very light on the CPU for CPU reviews because they don't tell us what future CPU.
One might come around to T-Square.
useless CPU benchmark. But we also anyway, you can't give the disclaimers constantly. It's kind of like we're really making our content for
turned around. That was the weirdest thing I've ever seen.
people enthusiasts. Like it's not, yeah. I mean, that should be obvious, right? I think there's other channels that are probably simplify things further than we do. We like to simplify things quite a bit. We don't go as technical or in-depth as like Gamers Nexus. We try to avoid that. It's sort of a deliberate decision we've made to make it more simple, but some people like the overly technical stuff. Even if it doesn't, as in buying advice, they just like to know all of that extra nerdy stuff, which is fine. But yeah, it's not typically anyway, is the path we take.
Sometimes when it comes to things like education, it's you've just got to push people towards the right direction. And you know, I like to think that our video is educational, so we want to provide information that's pushing people towards the right way and educating people on the right ways to do things. But anyway, we've been talking for so long in this episode about the 98.
And to be clear, like it's okay to not know. It's okay to ask. It's okay to request those tests. And that's why I made 3 videos where I think I calmly and carefully explained the situation. If you come away from that, then you still want to argue. That's where I get a bit frustrated because. Anyway, sorry, go on, Tim. Wrap this thing up. Stop me! Stop me!
Talking about I'm trying to get out of this podcast. No, it's all good. I was just saying that we probably won't talk about boring lights because we've just spoken for 2 hours on this. So we'll keep all of our interesting extra things for next time, where we'll probably have pretty much nothing to talk about because the CPUs come out and there's pretty much nothing else happening. So yeah, we'll save that for another day. But yeah, hopefully everyone has gotten some interesting thoughts out of our 9800X3D podcast recap in this episode. Lots of like we said, it's an interesting part, which means there's now more things to talk about, more follow-up content for the channel. People can get hyped about it, people can talk about it, and that's just good for the industry. Like to see that sort of thing. So keen for that follow-up on the Box main channel. That's it for this one. As always, audio feed, YouTube feed, depending on what version of the podcast you want, both are available all the way through. Hopefully, around driving to work or something. But yeah,
I was going to say apologies to everyone.
Counter-terrorists win.
Well, that's true.
Watch out.
Hi, welcome back.
These boys have got a bit of an arsenal and they don't mind using it.
Two, at least from my side, pretty disappointing CPU launches, and now the 9800X 3D luckily doesn't repeat that. So there are some quite interesting and very important changes to the CPU compared to the 7800X 3D. And Gamers Nexus already did a very good and detailed video about this topic last week that you should definitely watch. The quick summary is that back on the 7800X 3D, you had all the cores at the bottom,
pushing mid,
cache on top. So all the heat that was coming from the cache, and then the indium to the heat battery. 3D, this is the opposite. So they put the cache on the bottom, put the cores on top, drastically improve temperature. Now also allows overclock. From my side, that is absolutely amazing, and that was what I was missing on the 5800X 3D and on the 7800X 3D. With a passion for IT and technical expertise, Heads now offers innovative solutions for complex requirements worldwide. Through its own state-of-the-art data centers in Falkenstein, Nuremberg and Helsinki, as well as cloud locations in the US and Singapore, Heads prioritizes efficiency above all. The server auction offers both standardized systems and previously customized setups, all with no minimum contract term and no setup fee. Thanks to the server auction, hardware is reused sustainably, providing highly affordable systems while benefiting the environment. Find out all details about the server auction in the link below. AMD did not only flip the cache, but they also changed the complete layout. The cores on the 7800X 3D, then in the center, and then we had two
grabbing bomb
tiles next to it. made from silicon, but basically they're placeholders and that silicon without any circuit inside. But now on the 9800X 3D, it is one large cache chip on the bottom, so no longer 3 pieces, and on top they put the CCDs with the cores. And also they changed the thermal resistance by improving layers in between the CPU. That's already what you saw with Zen 5 in general, that it was running much colder.
Counter-terrorist win. Alright.
So we're talking about 20, maybe 30 degrees Celsius improvement over the previous generation. You can also easily see that if you compare the 7950X 3D that has
We only need 5 more of those.
2 DB cache and one without, you could always see like 20 to 30 degrees Celsius difference between both of the chips, and that is no longer the case. We did some overclocking testing last year when I was visiting the ASRock HQ with the 7800X 3D that was not unlocked or not meant to be overclocked, but we had some unlocked BIOS from ASUS where we could bypass some voltage limits. That's what we did. Voltage failure. I think it was just about 12 millivolt voltage increase, and yet CPU died quite quickly. So I was like, okay, there is definitely some proof to it that the 7800X 3D was fragile when it came to overclocking. Well, maybe not overclocking in terms of increasing the clock, but definitely raising the voltage, which was definitely also increasing the temperature. And that's one of the biggest improvements that AMD did on the 9800X 3D, which allowed them to save. AMD also said that it was not the cache that was fragile and that it was dying, but it was because the cores underneath just couldn't stay as cold. Due to the 7800X 3D couldn't clock aside, because it was just purely voltage and temperature limited, which is no longer the case here. And also, terrorists win. The cache sits below, and the cores on top. The core CCD itself is thinner than what you would see, for example, on the 9700X, because both share overall the same die height. But the 9800X 3D, because it's stacked, is lower for the CCD die height of the cores themselves, which typically means that it should improve the temperature even further.
They're gonna wish they were never born.
And the result of all those changes you can see here in Cinematic 3, where the 9800X 3D beats the 7800X 3D by 25% in performance. However, it also consumes 50% more power, so it's much more power hungry. This means that overall the 7800X 3D here stays more efficient, but is also quite a bit slower. Of course, if we compare it to any of the 16-core CPUs like the 9950X, the 9800X 3D doesn't really have a chance here, but it was also expected, and probably
terrorists win.
Where we were testing the 285K at a higher memory speed, we were testing with 8800 megatransfers, and now I retested the 285K at 6000 C30, so all of the configurations of all CPUs are performed at the same memory speed because you guys requested that. However, you have to keep in mind that Intel still has the better memory controller that allows for higher speed, so that means that it's a slight disadvantage for Intel.
We are out of here.
3D definitely benefits from the higher core clock as you can for credit workloads such as X5. We see a strong performance in the 7800.
Oh, one dinged in time.
While the power consumption only increased by 21%. So this is a pretty awesome ratio. But again, obviously, for example, the 9950X is much faster and also quite efficient, while the 285K from Intel is the fastest CPU in this benchmark. Finally, going over to the gaming benchmarks, and as usual in my charts, you can see the average FPS in yellow, the 1% low FPS in the darker yellow, and the average power consumption in blue. It's always the average over 50 minutes, so it's a very realistic power consumption value. In Remnant 2, the 9800X 3D just means everything and it's really efficient. With 60 watt under load, I don't really see any difference to the 7800X 3D. The minimum FPS or the 1% lows increased by 12% to 82 FPS, while the average FPS is 7%. Both Intel 285K and 4900KS have absolutely no chance. In Cyberpunk, I could observe a slight increase of power consumption by 17 watts, but it's overall, at least from my perspective, still in a very efficient area. I couldn't really observe observe an increase in the 1% low FPS. Terrorists win by 11%. Now, if you compare the 9800X 3D with the Intel 85K, it is 30% faster on the average FPS, so that is really a lot. In Valorant, we can see a performance increase over the 7800X 3D by about 3 to 6%, looking at the 1% low and the average FPS. And here the power consumption was even lower than on the 7800X 3D, which makes this overall the most efficient. The 1400 FPS is a little bit faster here when it comes to the average FPS. However, it is slower when you look at the 1% lows, which are just more important here. The high FPS shooter Counter-Strike 2 drastically from the 9800X 3D. The performance increase versus the previous gen is about 6 to 8%, which is promising so far with the 9800X 3D. Now here, again, as I told you, I retested the 285K with the slower memory, and this definitely didn't help. Again, it's extremely slow, especially with the 6030, so that didn't help at all. In Assassin's Creed Mirage, I could observe the highest performance, and it's absolutely impressive how much performance Zen 5 architecture in combination with 3D cache delivers. We are talking about 20 to 30%.
Now that the dust has started to settle, though I'm still not in a great headspace, we should probably take a look at what the future holds during the next Trump presidency.
4 more years.
So that we can all anticipate and also try our best to push back against some of the policies that will most likely go into effect. Mainly, this is about awareness of what's coming so that people can prepare and are not surprised when these changes actually do start happening. None of this will roll out smoothly, and some of the plans will take months, if not years, to fully enact, but this is what's coming. And this is what a shockingly large number of the country voted for. And while Trump has previously disavowed anything relating to Project 2025, claiming to have never even read the documents.
Project what? What?
They were prepared by people in Trump's orbit, people who worked alongside him in the previous administration and will undoubtedly be included in the next administration. In fact, as he pointed out in yesterday's episode, people from within the MAGA movement are already publicly saying that Project 2025 actually is the plan, and Trump was just deflecting because some of the goals within it were pretty fucking reprehensible and could turn away voters, which, yeah, obviously.
Yeah, but in addition to Project 2025, there is Trump's actual official plan known as Agenda 47, which is not a new Hitman game. Way shittier than that. It mirrors Project 2025 in a bunch of important ways. Without making this too confusing, we will start with a short summary of Project 2025 and then go into how Agenda 47 will change things on day one of his administration. A lot of these ideas will sound familiar, because despite claiming that he has no idea what this is, Trump certainly echoed a lot of these sentiments during countless rallies and interviews. Things such as hacking the Supreme Court with Trump-friendly judges, cutting climate protections and clean energy programs, pardoning the January 6th rioters, abolishing the Department of Education, forcing states to report miscarriages and abortions to the federal government, repealing protections for LGBTQ folks, gutting Medicare and Social Security, reinstating the Trump Muslim ban, banning abortion medication, sending immigrants to camps and/or just deporting them, ending the independence of the Department of Justice and the FBI, eliminating union and worker protections, and filling the remaining government roles with Trump loyalists every step of the way.
And that's just a small taste of the over 900 pages, which again, we will remind you, was written by a conservative think tank that included people in Trump's orbit, as well as members of his previous administration. So it's not as if this is some damning report that was aimed to hurt the GOP or hurt their goals by seeming too authoritarian. This is what they want.
It is still kind of weird that they just put it out.
Yeah.
Like, hey, this is what we're trying to do.
And guess what? It worked.
I guess. Nobody cared.
It's almost certainly going to become a larger roadmap, as evidenced by, all those loyalists doing victory laps and mentioning it by name for the past few days. Now, Agenda 47, despite being similar, that's the one that Trump's been touting, mostly because he has his name attached to it, so he gets credit for this one. Why would I want some pesky Project 2025 when I can do my own with my cool name attached to it?
Mine's better.
So let's take a look at that in particular to see what's in store for the country in the very soon coming months. Forbes did a great breakdown of Agenda 47, and we will try to add in some clips of Trump or potential administration members talking about these positions to back it all up. And all the clips are going to be from the most recent campaign. Links to full reporting, as well as a 16-page document from the Republican Party regarding this agenda, are down in the description. But while we're reading some of this, keep in mind that it's all going to cost a lot of money. And the idea that tariffs or pulling funding from Ukraine is going to pay for all of these plans is so far beyond foolish.
Yeah, it is interesting. I believe this week was like the first time, like after the election, is the first time anyone from the media asked the Trump campaign, wait, how much is it going to cost to deport 20 million people? And they're like, well, we haven't really figured that out yet.
In fact, the response initially was, it's not going to cost anything.
It's going to be free.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be magic.
Yeah.
He's a magic man. Anyway, on education, Trump's proposals for K through 12 schools include having parents elect school principals, cutting federal funding to any school that's teaching critical race theory, ending teacher tenure, creating a new credentialing body to only certify teachers who embrace patriotic values, encouraging prayer in schools, making it easier to kick out-of-control troublemakers out of school, supporting school districts that allow teachers to carry concealed firearms, and pushing school choice policies.
And I'm going to close the Department of Education and move education back to the states. And we're going to do it fast. We'll have one person plus a secretary, and all the person has to do is, are you teaching English? Are you teaching arithmetic? What are you doing? Reading, writing, and arithmetic. And are you not teaching woke? Not teaching woke is a very big factor.
Again, this and everything else we're about to talk about is what he was saying on the campaign trail. This isn't some hidden, to be discovered document. This is the policies they've campaigned on.
You know how our education system is terrible, just shameful, honestly? Mm-hmm. We're going to make it worse.
Yeah.
So much worse. Mm-hmm. These kids are learning nothing.
We're going to dismantle it by sending it back to the states and just getting every educator worth their salt to just quit the field and leave.
I mean, they've been working on that for several decades now. So many teachers, they last a couple years and they're like, wait, why am I doing this thankless job?
Yeah, and now I'll be accused of being
money?
a criminal in addition to everything else because I'm not patriotic enough.
Yeah. I have skills. I only do this because I actually care about the next generation of people in this country, and
Also,
it's not fucking worth it anymore.
Much like with the other policies we're going to talk about, the exact definition of what they can or will go after will change. Like, what's critical race theory?
Right, it's
I don't
not-
know, anything that they disagree with.
They say, oh, any school teaching critical race theory. No fucking K through 12 schools are teaching critical race theory because it's a very niche part of like law school education, but that's not what they're talking about.
Yeah,
that's just a label they put on
that
anything.
into anything, yes.
Which like increasingly is just including like talking about like why Martin Luther King was protesting or like what happened to cause the Civil War.
Yeah, you can
and things
already
like
see it in the courses that PragerU is offering to certain school districts.
Which a lot of school districts are taking them up on that offer, which is crazy.
It's insane, but it's already happening and it's only gonna get worse. Look at the Trump Bibles going to schools. PragerU is gonna have a lot of contracts with a lot of schools. On climate change, the U.S. would again leave the Paris Climate Accord, and the ex-president has proposed getting rid of President Joe Biden's policies restricting emissions and targeting 67% of new vehicles to be electric by 2032, and massively scaling up oil and gas production.
We don't have a global warming problem. They don't use that term anymore anyway because, as you can see, the planet, it's cool out here today, isn't it? Oh, they go crazy when I say it. But it's not global warming because at certain points it starts to cool a little bit, like now. We're going to make cars the way we had it 40 or 50 years ago. We were dominant. We're going to be dominant again. We would have been supplying oil and gas to China, to all of Asia. It's Alaska. He comes in and he rejects it because the environmentalists reject it. It has nothing to do with the environment. It's good for the environment.
Now, on the Justice Department, Trump has pledged to appoint 100 U.S. attorneys who would be aligned with his policies and investigate some left-leaning local district attorneys. Also pledging to establish a DOJ task force on protecting the right to self-defense and fight purported anti-conservative bias at law schools and law firms.
But we will rapidly review the cases of every political prisoner who's unjustly victimized by the Biden regime so we can get them out of the gulags and back to their families where they belong. As we completely overhaul the Federal Department of Justice and FBI, we will also launch sweeping civil rights investigations into Marxist local district attorneys. And that's what we have. They're Marxists in many cases.
Yeah, we love small
Kinda cooked
government.
there for a second.
Don't we,
Kinda
folks?
cooked.
This is federal overreach to like an absurd
You sure
cartoonish
did.
degree.
Yeah.
But we
okay
like
when
it
they
when
do
it's doing things we like. Like investigating fucking local district attorneys. Are you insane? What the fuck is this shit? You're a fascist.
Yeah, well, they got a hold on that term lawfare, and they said, that actually sounds pretty good.
The most overused term of the past year or so.
Yeah.
And we're never going to hear the end of it. Anyway, immigration! Trump plans to prohibit undocumented immigrants from receiving any benefits. He's going to end birthright citizenship for the children of undocumented immigrants. Reinstate a travel ban from certain countries. You know the ones. Pause refugee admissions. Mandate extreme vetting of foreign nationals. Block federal grants to sanctuary cities, and end the catch and release practice of releasing migrants while they await immigration hearings. Plus, he's going to close the southern border to asylum seekers and suspend visa programs, including the visa lottery and family.
Shit! And on day one, we begin the largest domestic deportation operation in American history. We have no choice. When I return to office, the travel ban is coming back even bigger and much stronger than before. The United States will not be condemned for the same fate as countries like France, which are truly going through hell right now. I will also order our government to deny entry to all communists and Marxists as required by law.
And we'll get into it in a second, but the process of doing this is hard to even wrap your head around. And the cost of doing this, that's without even mentioning how morally reprehensible it is and how people are going to get caught up in this, and bad things can potentially happen.
Yeah, I'm also worried, like, once they do stop all this illegal immigration, who the fuck am I gonna blame when all of my problems remain in place? What the fuck? Was it my fault all along? Was it capitalism? No, I don't want to think about it. I want someone to blame.
On the economy, Trump proposes cutting taxes and slashing federal regulations, also proposing baseline tariffs on foreign goods in hopes of spurring American manufacturing, which will go up for countries who have unfair trade practices.
We are going to do it through low taxes and high tariffs, actually.
Last unknown.
We won't have any inflation.
Critics say your tariffs will end up being like a national sales tax.
Nope. The countries will pay.
America at the moment has $3 trillion worth of imports. You're going to add tariffs to every single one of them. That is going to push up the cost for all those people who want to buy foreign goods.
No. What's going to happen?
Are you rocking Scout D every time?
Yeah, it is, but not the way you figured. I was always very good at math.
And as everyone, everyone
good.
has pointed out, including economists straight to his face at that economic forum just last month, tariffs are going to be a tax on the American citizen, not on the countries that are sending stuff over.
I saw one very anecdotal account already where they didn't specify what type of company, but one company has already canceled Christmas bonuses this year because
they have to stock up.
They import like all of their materials, and they're like, well, we have to like basically import we have to clear out our bank account and import as much fucking raw material as possible before January 20th, because then it's gonna get way more expensive.
Yes.
So sorry, no Christmas bonuses.
Yeah.
And also, we're gonna have to start looking at making cuts.
Yeah.
Then there's trans rights. Trump obviously takes a hard stance against transgender rights, calling for any healthcare provider providing gender-affirming care for youth to be terminated from Medicare and Medicaid, stripping federal funding from any school where an official or teacher suggests a child could be, quote, trapped in the wrong body, and encouraging Congress to pass legislation saying the only genders recognized by the U.S. government are male and female, and they are assigned at birth.
Could you imagine your child goes to school and they don't even call you, and they change the sex of your child? Look at it.
that last one's fucked up.
Hell yes, brother.
The first few bits, I'm like, these are not things. These are things you've made up in your head. They're not actually happening. I'm sorry. But yeah, no, that last part, that's just, you're just punishing trans people for existing.
Yeah.
It doesn't hurt you. It doesn't affect you. You're just being a dick.
Yeah. And of course, one guy in particular is already doing a victory lap related to one of Trump's policy positions, and that is Robert F. Kennedy Jr.
Woo, get that fluoride out of those pipes!
It is bonkers. Even more than, it's hard to say this, but even more than the reality of a Trump presidency again, is the fact that not only did Robert F. Kennedy Jr. exist in this campaign cycle, and then we got into all the drama surrounding him and another potential extramarital affair, but aside from all of that, he immediately kissed the ring and is, according to Trump, getting a position of power in the Food and Drug Administration.
We did it, Donald!
We
can add a few names like Robert F. Kennedy Jr. He came out. And he's going to help make America healthy again. And now he's a great guy, and he really means it. He wants to do some things, and we're going to let him go to it. Bobby, stay away from the liquid gold. Other than that, go have a good time, Bobby.
Would that mean clearing out the top-level federal service workers that are currently at the FDA and CDC?
In some categories, I would say.
What does that look like? Yeah.
In some categories of workers, there are entire departments, like the nutrition departments at FDA, that have to go. I think Florida is on the way out because of that court decision. I think the faster that it goes out, the better. I'm not going to compel anybody to take it out, but I'm going to advise the water districts about their legal liability, their legal obligation to their service zones and to their constituents.
Anyway, yeah, just trying to make sure we're giving it the explicit coverage that it deserves. The biggest day one issue for Trump appears to be his deportation of illegal immigrants, which is going to be a nightmare scenario for countless people in this country. First and foremost, the idea of a large-scale mass deportation initiative working seamlessly with no issues, no one falsely identified, no one harmed or injured, no one killed, and everyone's human rights being taken into account throughout this process is patently absurd, and it's horrifying to even think about. But even with some false idea about a perfect deportation of all the criminal illegal migrants, his administration has already indicated time and time again they will start chipping away at other residents as well, including people who were born here and received their citizenship through birthright, or immigrants who have married into citizenship that's cheating, no, and eventually anyone else that they decide to deport through a process that Stephen Miller himself has touted, calling it turbocharged denaturalization, which would go after certain people who are here perfectly legally. They followed all the rules, but you gotta go.
As for how he's going to pay for any of that, despite Trump claiming that it'll cost us nothing, there will be no bill, or whatever the quote is, people who have their feet firmly planted in reality indicate that such an effort would potentially cost billions of dollars, with an added bonus of hurting the economy in the process.
Hell yeah, brother.
Which is shocking, we know. From NPR, while presidents have broad powers over immigration, for example, there are real operational, legal, and political challenges to carrying out mass deportations. Groups like the American Immigration Council estimate it would cost billions of dollars for Trump to implement his deportation plan. It could also have a dramatic impact on the economy if industries such as construction, hospitality, and agriculture lose masses of workers. There is also a resource challenge. U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement already must pick and choose where to focus its limited resources. Carrying out mass deportation would require a massive increase in manpower to arrest and deport millions of people a year.
Well, that's why we bring in the army.
And just so we're on the same page here, it sucks to be talking about this stuff in a deadpan, matter-of-fact way. Like, reading that last paragraph from NPR about the practicalities of how this may happen is shocking to me. It hurts my soul to read it as if it's something that's fact, because it is. It hurts to report on this. These are people's lives, people's livelihoods at risk here. It still doesn't feel real, and we really hope that we were better than this, or that we've maybe learned something from history.
Behind you.
But apparently we gotta learn it again.
Yeah, and not even that, not even ancient history. There's been multiple times where like southern states have like cracked down on illegal immigration, and they're like, wait, where's all the food that used to grow here? Wasn't there farm workers on this farm? Fuck,
Yeah.
Wait, hold on. What do you mean food's more expensive now?
And obviously,
Good shit.
Nice job.
not casting like all immigrants as just day laborers or
no, but they form
workers.
a very important backbone to like a part of the American society that we really take for granted, and you're gonna feel it.
Yeah, but we need to believe Donald Trump when he says this stuff, and start working to protect our friends and neighbors now, because Trump will be president, and all of the things that he was touting on the campaign trail, just believe him that he's gonna do it. Don't think that it was just lies and jokes. Because in reality, that's what a lot of people voted for.
Anyways, these are just a few of the plans included in Agenda 47.
They're up
Trump
mid.
and his advisors don't seem like they'll be wasting any time getting many of these ideas off the ground immediately after being sworn in.
What was in
We've
garage?
already looked through this once.
Quick Joe garage.
He kicked the door in last time.
Executive
and
order,
got
baby.
right to fucking work.
Yeah.
They carve through any red tape. They enact these policies by whatever means possible.
Don't worry about the legalities afterwards.
This is a
And with
dummy.
control of the Senate and potentially the House, it
To your
could be a
left,
lot
right,
easier
John.
to get this stuff going. So, yes, we know that it's a bummer, but we're not going to stop explaining this stuff to you just because it's bad news. Because there's going to be a lot of bad news to talk about.
Yeah.
You have to be aware of this stuff, because otherwise it goes by completely uncontested, and
do you
tons
want
of
me to
people
hold?
are completely oblivious
Keep
to the
them
world
off.
around them. By the time they realize something awful is
Yeah, I got
happening,
both
it's
entrances
usually
to
too
be
late.
right
Yeah,
now.
so we're just trying to give you a little head start on what the very near future might look like and what the first few weeks and months.
They're both strapped down.
That's what they're going to try and do. So take the information and share it, and look out for your friends and neighbors. And just for the slightest bit of levity conversation, while still preparing you for the next Trump presidency, I think we need to address the gamers. Gamers, if nothing else scared you, I need you to listen right now. Now, back in 2019, when he was president the first time, Trump indicated, said on camera and everything, we'll play the clip, he would potentially ban violent video games because they, quote, corrupt America's
He
youth.
can't be up.
We must stop the glorification of violence in our society. This includes the gruesome and grisly video games that are now commonplace. It is too easy today for troubled youth to surround themselves with a culture that celebrates violence. We must stop or substantially
around.
reduce this, and it has to begin immediately.
And he's gonna make it mandatory, compulsory deodorant and showers. Is that what you want?
If all that other stuff...
He's gonna make Asmongold clean his room.
He already did. He already did. But if all that other stuff didn't have you worried, we would hate to be the ones to let you know that Grand Theft Auto 6 is currently scheduled to release during the next Trump presidency.
Very violent. The violence is right there in the name.
Now, it's supposed to be...
Crime Simulator 6. I don't think so. Bye-bye.
It's supposed to be coming out. Or will it? Who knows at this point, because if there's one game in particular that would be targeted by an extremely conservative government, it's definitely going to be Grand Theft Auto.
Yeah, in addition to being just extremely violent, it's also a series that is a really harsh parody of just American culture.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, they're gonna.
And it's also been targeted in the past multiple times.
Yeah.
So
well, this time it's on the president's desk.
gamers, stay alert. One thing that we can say is safe. Call of Duty definitely going to be
Well,
safe.
because the only people that die are bad guys.
Yeah,
terrorists.
And Call of Duty prepares the next generation for their inevitable service to the country.
It's also great for the gun industry
Bro,
because,
it's
like,
so
before you get your
What?
hands on a gun, you know about all the different, all of the red dots and the holographic and you know, the different stocks and you go to that your
I
first
can't
trip
buy
to the
here.
gun shop, you walk in like
I know
like
everything.
you own the place.
Yeah.
It's great for business.
Joe?
But hey, that's what the next generation is being bred for. Compulsory service.
That's right.
So good luck, gamers. He's probably going to be coming for you too.
Yeah.
Oh, hell
He
yeah.
needs you and your body to fight China.
Oh, hell yeah.
Anyway, time to take a quick break. Thank today's sponsors. Wait. Now it's time to take a quick break to thank today's sponsors for supporting the show and keeping us going in these bleak, desperate times. Starting off with an ad that's fun to read and helps you to stay as clean as a whistle.
That's
This episode is sponsored by Manscaped. Fellas, the holiday season's here, and trust me, you don't want to be the guy showing up with the tangled tinsel on your ornaments. Luckily, our friends at Manscaped have got you covered from head to right down the chimney with the Beard and Balls bundle. Featuring the Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra and the Beard Hedger, this bundle will make sure you're a gift worth unwrapping. Get ready for those mistletoe moments and get 20% off plus free shipping with the code NEWSDUMP at manscaped.com.
The Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra is your ball's new best friend. It cuts through the North Pole of bushes with ease, and it's gentle on your most delicate
news dump. Apply this.com/free news dump.
All right, back to the news now, and apologies that we don't have much more to talk about.
Not a lot
this
else
week,
going on.
But we are understandably trying to navigate our way through some pretty ominous reality. It's not so much about coping or whatever, it's more trying to find something fun or interesting to talk about that isn't related to our potentially very dark future.
Yeah.
It's been a week, folks, so fuck it. Here's a story that won't affect the lives of anyone who reads it. It's just the ending of a story that was as big as 2024 itself.
Good shit, Joe.
Raygun, woo! Raygun, the Olympic.
Who died for your
there
country,
she is.
Joe?
Raygun, the Olympic athlete who
Thanks,
competed in
lads.
breakdancing with a very unique
Sorry, I'm,
routine,
like, trying
scoring
to
her
correct
0
someone's
points
fucking-
and simultaneously
I'm,
making
like,
her a
half
hero
paying
and
attention,
anti-hero. That Raygun has announced
You're
that
trying
she's
to
retiring
you're
from
trying
the
to
sport.
correct
She's
someone's
done all
fucking.
that she possibly could.
No, I'm trying to.
What do you,
Yeah.
I've conquered
All
every
right.
mountain.
Oh my
Good
God.
on
Created a
you. More power
legacy.
to you.
Yeah.
There's nothing
Nothing left to
left
do.
for her to do.
I mean, it works,
She went
I
on
guess.
the biggest stage there is,
Yeah.
the Olympics, and
No, you're doing it all wrong.
made a moment to remember.
Raygun week,
supposed to
where
have
there,
another
where there were
dude.
no more competitions to conquer.
There were no more sick dance moves to do.
Touch your back more.
Here's NPR with more.
Pop that
Ray
pussy.
Gunn, whose real name is Rachel Gunn, said on Australian radio earlier this
sorry,
week
boys, I meant
that she does
Bussy.
not want to endure the criticism that would come with future performances possibly being recorded and posted online. It's just not going to mean the same thing, she said. It's not going to be the same experience because of everything that's at stake. Breaking debuted as an Olympic sport over the summer. During the competition in
These
Paris,
guys are ass,
Gunn
we just need to
failed to
remember
score
that.
any points, losing 18-0 in each of her
Yes.
3 round-robin battles.
What is this? Get this off the stage.
Reactions to Gunn's performance ranged from declarations of her moves being eccentric to questions about her place in the sport as a white woman
Wait,
in
Droptimus.
academia, given the dance style's
Sell-
roots in the
sell
early
that
New
and
York
buy me
hip-hop
out.
scene.
Her routine was made into memes and spoofed on late-night television. It's surreal and it's still impossible to process, she said. That seems a really difficult thing for me to do now, to approach a
wait,
battle.
Joe took
she
your
said.
M4.
I mean, I
Fuck
still
him.
dance, and I still break,
that guy.
but that's like in my living room with my partner. Gunn said
that
she has
Joe.
relied on
Fuck that
memes
Joe.
and positive messages from fans to balance
fuck
out the negativity. She said that she is working on other projects that, quote,
told him.
encourage
Why are
people
you
to
throwing
dance
this?
and have
Fuck off.
fun and be creative and
Oh,
be
that
themselves.
shit.
Which is honestly
Oh,
great.
wait, Joe don't want to.
Yeah,
I feel like she's going to be a great role model for being yourself.
If she had competed in a
interpretive dance
positivity
Pushing outside,
competition,
they're not ready
I think she would have gotten 10s from all the judges. But unfortunately, she competed in a breakdancing competition, and I'm sorry, ma'am. What are you doing?
Yeah. But again, great role model for being yourself.
Oh my God.
You too can one day go in front of the world and embarrass yourself.
Look, here I'll say that it was probably net positive that she did compete in the Olympics.
Yeah, it was interesting.
It turned it into something bigger than what it would have ever been. It really put Australia on the map. And
no one even knew where it was.
And it inspired a generation of kids
He's
to
playing
look and say, I could do that.
Yeah, I could do that better
Should we
than
save
her.
here?
I could be an Olympic athlete.
That's an Olympian? I should
Oh,
train to be in the
bitch.
Olympics.
Look, it compete in the Olympics.
Yeah, it was interesting.
It turned it into something bigger than what it would have ever been. It really put Australia on the map.
Yeah.
And,
No one even knew where it was.
And it inspired a generation of
Oh, this one
kids
fucking
to
ran.
look and say, I could do that.
Yeah, I could do that better than her.
I could be an Olympic athlete.
That's an Olympian.
Bro, fuck that guy,
I should
man.
train to be in the Olympics.
Look, probably not great as a competitive breakdancer.
Probably.
But probably going to do wonderful things as a
Really
mentor.
just let these guys claw
and a
back.
role model.
Fuck.
Also, she inspired a lot
Alright.
more joy than hatred when
Everybody
it was all
rush
said and done. I
outside.
mean, there were no shortage of ray gun Halloween costumes this year.
Yeah, it's a good one.
So she definitely made her mark culturally, even if it was just temporary. Look, it was a fun
Everybody
story
rush
from this
outside,
year.
Let's go.
out of all the negativity, I mean, there was a lot of negativity attached to it, but specifically, even out of the Olympics, it wasn't even in the top 5 of negative news stories.
Yeah, it's just such a weird story because a lot of Olympians they try to do by all indications. Raygun did exactly what she set out to do, and they just weren't into it.
It's all because Blue didn't rush outside of this.
And
that fucking guy.
Specifically the judges.
Yeah. But moving over to unsolved mysteries being solved, we're still not exactly sure what was lost. Some arguing that it might have been baked goods.
1v1 E7.
On the other side of the world, however, in home of Raygun, Australia, they've been dealing with a similar problem, and they've finally figured out what they're dealing with. Something disgusting, putrid, and foul. Worse than the nastiest drop bear. Stickier than the insides of a kangaroo's pouch.
All right,
It's
what are we doing?
fart
Hot rush
burgers.
or rant rush?
Or fatbergs, depending on who you talk to.
And depending on the ingredients.
Oh, I remember when London had one of these.
There's a lot of cities dealing with a lot of fatbergs, which is just...
It's as nasty as it sounds.
Yeah.
So yes, round blobs filled with human excrement, fat, drugs, and other nasty ingredients washing onto the shores of Sydney's beaches. Probably an ominous sign, but also just totally disgusting. Imagine swimming nearby and accidentally wading into a swarm of these floating shit-filled orbs.
Oh, look, a jellyfish!
Yeah, I mean, Australia has that tiny jellyfish.
Two
yeah,
but
yeah. Oh, thank God! It's just a fatberg.
It's just human shit.
Yeah. Here's CNN with more on the grossest story of the week so far.
The mystery of the black balls that washed up on some of Sydney's most iconic beaches last month has now been solved. Australian beachgoers were turned away from 7 beaches last month after lifeguards spotted thousands of black spheres, prompting closures and cleanup efforts. A team of scientists at the University of New South Wales has revealed the black balls, initially thought to be a car, were actually mini fatbergs made up of human feces, methamphetamine, human hair, fatty acids, and food waste.
Hell yeah, brother.
Hundreds of other vile and befuddling substances. Quote, "They smell absolutely disgusting.
Oi.
They smell worse than anything you've ever smelled."
I'm going to
Lead
rush
investigator,
around.
Associate Professor John Beeves told CNN affiliate 9 News.
The New South Wales Environmental Protection Authority first warned Sydney residents to avoid swimming or touching the balls on October 17th after they were spotted at 7 beaches, including the city's famed Bondi Beach. The balls were consistent with fatbergs, congealed masses of fats, oils, and greasy molecules that can accumulate in sewage, the scientists wrote, noting their presence highlights the issue of pollution on its coastline. I wouldn't want to swim like that with cold 9 News.
Holy
These
shit.
Sydney fatbergs were no ordinary fatbergs, however. The blobs contained everything from fecal matter to medication and recreational drugs, the scientists wrote. Where these gross balls came from still remains a mystery.
I venture to say they probably came from the residents of Sydney.
Yeah, this is you.
There's a pipe leaking somewhere.
You need to look in the mirror, Sydney.
I heard him.
Ew, disgusting.
Oi, that was more South African. Anyway, good news is we have plenty of fatbergs, fartbergs, barfbergs, and cancerbergs waiting for us in the immediate future once Trump dismantles the pesky EPA.
Yeah, the one here.
Get him out of here!
Yeah. A lot more
Oh,
beaches
the
to be
things
closed.
you'll find while walking on our beaches.
Yeah. But speaking of Australia and jobs that a lot of us would be more than happy to do during this very specific moment in time, a man from
The
Scotland
enemy team?
moved to Australia and got to fill out a role in a dream job. Lighthouse keeper.
Give it back! Give it back!
He already looks the part. Yeah, that's a lighthouse keeper, all right.
Assigned lighthouse keeper at birth.
And yes, we are kind of jealous of this guy who gets to live in absolute
I got
isolation
it.
aside from
You
2
think of
penguins
war or
as friends. Of course we do. But here's the BBC with more on old Sandy Duthie, moving across the world.
He's got a lighthouse name.
To be alone. Sandy Duthie, 42, jumped at the chance when the previous lighthouse keeper decided to retire after 25 years off the coast of
shit, he's
Victoria.
heaven.
Landing the lighthouse
Oh my
keeper
God!
caretaker job means he is now spending 6 months of the year there. 1 month on, 1 month off. Colony of penguins for company.
All right.
Oh, so this is true. He and another keeper who has now been working there for 6 months. The month on, month off rotation. Sandy and his enormous beard, which he has cultivated for many years, and which he thinks may have started his new job back in March. He gets to and from the island via a small boat charter.
I'm gonna do
Takes
the
about
same
30
exact
minutes
thing
if
every
the weather
round.
allows.
I'm just gonna run
Conditions
up
are often
outside
choppy,
and push
and there
Evan.
tend to be whales nearby.
So-
He describes Gabo Island as small
These
but
guys are
with
so
amazing
fucking
wildlife.
ass.
We have little penguins, a large colony of them, he said. We have whales, sea eagles, and seals. We have whales go past constantly at the moment. I saw around 15 or 16 today. Sometimes there are 30 or 40.
This time.
Don't get me wrong, there are some days where it seems like a prison sometimes. The previous caretaker described it as Alcatraz, the Rock. You can't leave. Go to family events. You're here. Sometimes we get stuck on here for days on end because of the weather.
It's the perfect,
Oh my God.
perfect place to be. You get paid to sit around. I know that it's more than that.
Imagine how much you could get done living all life.
There was time now. You could end up having sex with your mattress.
What the fuck are they doing?
When you and another lighthouse keeper get stranded there.
No awareness at all.
Paranormal things might be afoot.
Things are gonna get weird.
Once the fog rolls in, shit gets crazy.
Squeaky.
Start drinking turpentine.
Now finally today, it looks like at least some of the 10,000 soldiers that North Korea sent to fight alongside Russia have gotten a little taste of the internet, and they like what they taste. They have lost all interest in anything else.
Bro, what the fuck was that peak? Why would he do that?
Apparently, they took one look at the internet and say, "Oh God!" So clearly, the North Koreans have not heard about No Nut November. It's a worldwide phenomenon, but they were not aware. Because according to the chief foreign affairs commentator for the Financial Times, a usually reliable source tells me that the North Korean soldiers who have deployed to Russia have never had unfettered access to the internet before. As a result, they are gorging on pornography.
Honestly.
They can't get enough. They cannot get enough.
They should just be dropping.
Yeah. Come on. How can you fight a war when you're distracted by those giant boobs? Now, because we are living in this very dumb reality, a spokesman for the Defense Department was asked about this topic, and he responded to a military magazine saying the following. As entertaining as that sounds, I can't confirm any North Korean internet habits or virtual extracurriculars in Russia, Army Lieutenant Colonel Charlie Dietz told Task and Purpose. We're focused on the more serious aspects of North Korea's involvement, if any, in Russia's military operations. Internet access? That's a question best directed to Moscow. Right now, our attention remains on supporting Ukraine and addressing the more significant regional security concerns.
If he wins this, he deserves to rank up.
Sure, there are more important things to be
I'd
worried
probably hit him,
about,
like,
but if true, this would...
I'm gonna wait till like 20
would this
seconds
not
to even
be
walk
a
in.
huge exploitable vulnerability for the
Just
entire
mind-
North
mind
Korean
fucking.
army?
Come on.
We should be funding our OnlyFans stars through military and DoD contracts because their content might save lives, and it might allow for a crushing blow to the Russian front line. A handful of porn stars, a real Hogan's Heroes, a real dirty dozen, could change the world by distracting our foes at critical moments like this. And maybe the DoD shouldn't brush off the obviously incredible tactic that we are offering them right now for free.
They've proven to be susceptible to pornography. Why aren't we exploiting this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not even just porno. They should start catfishing these guys.
I think that already happens in the CIA. But yeah, on a large scale.
Do it more. Do it more.
Imagine getting North Korean and Russian soldiers hooked on bots that are supposed to be your girlfriend.
Yeah.
Fuck. There you go.
Maybe AI is good.
In this one scenario. Anyways, it's a bunch of dumb stories at the end there to just kind of like, I don't know, do whatever to the mood. We'll be back with Weekly Weird News. Hope you're having an okay week.
You might have just earned
Make sure you
yourself a
like the
rank up
video
there.
for engagement. Make
No,
sure you
they
leave a
didn't,
comment
bro.
down there and talk about anything
Oh,
for
I
the
didn't
engagement
touch
today.
it.
For the
Yeah.
engagement, of course.
I swear I said
Make sure you
fucking
subscribe to
bad
the
with
channel, and if you somehow missed it, we got episodes for you to watch over here. We have just us yelling at the Democratic Party for 30 minutes and
bad Democrats.
He's rallying the
and
troops now.
another episode from earlier in the week before everything went to shit. So
He's
check
in there
all those
saying,
out,
"Guys,
and we'll be
they're
back
ass.
with
I
Weekly
just
Weird
aced with the
News,
AP9, guys.
and hopefully not
Come on, we got this."
depression news. But who knows? Weird
Bro, I
world going
literally,
forward.
Why are they calling
Bye.
timeouts, bro? They're gonna lose it. Just get it done with. Get us off this fucking dog shit map.
fucking tired of it.
Hi and welcome back to a new video. This year we already had to suffer through two,
Was
at
that
least
you
from my
saying,
side, pretty
Pig
disappointing
Nuke of Gay?
CPU launches,
Yeah.
and now the 9800X
Dude, I hate this, man.
3D luckily
That's my least favorite map in
doesn't
CS.
repeat that.
So
Man, you really got
So
the
there are
Uno
some
reverse
quite
card
I wouldn't say
interesting
least
and very
favorite
important
map, but
changes to the CPU
it's
compared
not a great
to
map.
the 7800X
I would really love
3D.
Overpass back.
And Gamers Next
Or
has already
Train.
did a very
Train would be
good
sick.
video about this
Train
topic
would be
last week that you
sick.
should
I love
definitely
Train.
watch.
Dude,
The quick
Cash.
summary
I miss
is that back on the
Bro, Cash
7800X
was
3D,
literally my
you
favorite
had
map.
all
I'm
the
so
cores at the
pissed.
bottom,
Fucking
and then you had the
haven't
cache on top.
Give it
So all the
time, they're
heat
still
that
cooking.
was coming from the cores had to
No,
go
no,
I don't
through the
believe that.
cache,
Fucking,
and then
they're
the
cooking
heat
like,
they need
you know
a
that
map
heat better
changer
and
for
make that
rear
cooler.
mode.
And on
You know,
the
like that meme of,
9800X
like, the hot dog
3D,
and, like, the
this is
cereal?
the opposite. So
That's
they put
what-
the
that's what
cache on
Valve
the
does,
bottom, put the cores
No,
on
dude,
top,
you
and
see
just drastically
the original
increase
map maker, he's
temperatures.
redoing it.
And not only that, 9800X
Will Valve
3D
use it?
now
Right,
also allows overclocking. From my side, that is absolutely amazing, and that was
Nah,
what I
mean,
was missing on the
they really need a
5800X
map change.
3D and on the
Like take
7800X
off
3D.
one of
With the
the
passion for
Anubis
IT and
or
technical
like
expertise,
no,
Heads now offers
those two
innovative
fucking maps are
solutions
just
for
gay.
complex requirements
They're gonna get rid of
worldwide
Vertigo,
through its
though.
own state-of-the-art data
Oh,
centers
good.
in Falkenstein,
I
Norway,
wouldn't even be mad.
as well
Yeah.
as
I wouldn't
cloud
even be
stations
mad.
in
Put
the
cash
US
back
and
in, take out
Singapore.
Vertigo. I
Heads
wouldn't be mad.
prioritizes efficiency
I
above
think
all.
those
The
maps
server
are-
auction offers
I mean,
both standardized systems and previously customized setups.
they're
all
kind of
with
both
no
cheesy in
minimum
their own way,
contract
you know what I
term and
mean?
no setup fee.
Like,
Yeah.
Thanks to the server auction, hardware
I
is
think
being used sustainably,
Cash
providing
bring back
highly affordable
Overpass.
systems while
Overpass should
benefiting
be
the
in
environment.
place of like
Find out
Anubis
all
or
details
or
about the
Ancient
server
or some
auction
shit. Like
in
it's
the
just a
video.
big map.
AMD did not
Lots
only
of shit.
flip the cache, but they also
Yeah.
changed
Overpass is
the
like
complete
one of the
layout.
few maps that
So
you could
previously
low-key
we had
say,
the
like,
CCD on the bottom with
T-side's
the cores
doable.
on the 7800X
Like most
3D,
maps, dude, like, you
then
can't
the
fucking,
3D
like, T-side
cache
shit.
in the center, and then we had
This is one of
like
those maps.
placeholder
Nuke is
tiles
very
next
T-sided.
to it,
Nuke
made from
is very
silicon,
T-sided.
but basically
You think
it's
for that side?
placeholders
What?
that's
Yeah,
in
Nuke
the
is very
circuit
T-sided.
circuit
I
itself.
think so.
But now
I
on the
think so.
9800X
It's very
3D, it is
C2-sided.
one large cache chip on the bottom, so
T-sided.
no longer three pieces.
I don't know, I feel like I've
and
got
on
good
top
T-sides
they
here.
put the CCDs with the cores. And also in between, they changed thermal resistance by improving layers in between the CPU. That's already what you saw with Zen 5 in general. It was running much colder, and all those improvements are inside the 9800X 3D.
I whiffed.
So we're talking
Oh my
about
God, they're
20
winning.
to maybe 30 degrees
Fuck.
Celsius improvement
there's one behind
over the
us.
previous
Shit.
generation. You can also easily see that if you compare the 7950X 3D that has one
They win these.
with 3DV cache and one without, you could always see like 20 to 30
Oh,
degrees Celsius
he's dark on B.
difference between both of the chips, and that is no longer the case. We did some overclocking testing last year when I was visiting the Asus HQ with the 7800X 3D that was not
Hit me up with an
unlocked
AK, wait,
or
Joe.
not meant to be overclocked, but we had some unlocked BIOS from Asus where we could bypass some voltage limits, and that's what we did.
I'm
And
buying myself an
increasing the
AK too. It's
voltage
my first
led
rifle.
to the CPU failure.
Hell yeah.
I think it was just about 200
Charlie's
millivolt
bastards
voltage
who's
increase,
boss.
and yet
We gotta
CPU
close
died
out this game.
quite quickly. So I was like, okay.
Yeah, I just-
there
I
is
like- I'm
some
sick and tired,
solution
don't wanna
to
be
it.
here
The 7800X 3D was fragile when it came to overclocking. Well, maybe not overclocking in terms of increasing the clock, but definitely raising the voltage, which was definitely also happening. And that's one of the biggest improvements that the 9800X 3D, which allowed them to enable overclocking and make sure it's also safe. AMD also said it was not the cache that was fragile, that it was dying, but it was
That's
the cores underneath.
One cell.
Oh.
Due to those mechanical limits, it
I'm
was
a bot,
always that
dude.
the 7800X 3D couldn't clock aside because it was just purely.
Bro, he peeked with the fucking
no longer
Nagav,
the
oh
case
my
here.
God!
And
He's
also
hell,
you have to
he's
keep in
hell,
mind
he's
that
hell.
on the 9800X 3D, because
He's
the
got a
cache sits
fucking
below
Nagav.
and the cores on top,
Okay,
the
wait a minute.
core CCD itself is thinner than what you would see,
Do not
for
peek.
example, on the 97X, because both share overall the same
Good try.
We fucking
but
lose.
the
Who
9800X
is this?
3D, because it's stacked, is lower for the CCD die height of the cores themselves, which typically means
That dude hard swung with the Negev after pulling out a
further.
molly. There's
And
nothing I
all
can
of this
do.
should be quite exciting for overclocking. And the result
Yeah, I
of all
peeked
those
with you,
changes
so-
you can see here in Cinebench R23, where the 9800X 3D beats the 7800X 3D
That's why you
by
just don't use it,
25% in
Just let
performance. However,
You
it
know
also
that's like the
consumes
second time I've heard that
50%
today?
more power, so it's much more power hungry.
Just fucking
means
This is
shoot
you.
him.
This is the guy she told you not
Best
to worry
util
about.
is a good.
This
not
50-ton
util.
gaming PC that costs more than
within my car, came into my shop for some software troubleshooting, and boy, do I feel inadequate. It has an Asus ROG Strix 4090, 64 GB DDR5, 13th Gen i9, and a naturally aspirated V10. it or not, this is my first time seeing 4090 in person. Until now, I've only ever seen it on the internet. Just like you and a real woman. As a repair shop, I never really see high-end desktops like this. It's mostly shitty pre-builts with saggy that begin with the word I buy power. And it's always a pleasure compared to the dust-filled shitboxes that normally occupy my shop. But jokes aside, it doesn't matter how expensive your stuff is because it's your stuff and you earned it. There will always be someone with a better computer or a better car, so just appreciate what you have.
Yeah, Mini has Negev. But he's low.
This is you. This is the guy she told you not to worry about. This 50-ton gaming PC that costs more than my car came into my shop for some software troubleshooting, and boy, do I feel inadequate.
Oh no, do I look?
It has an Asus ROG Strix 4090, 64 gigabytes DDR5, a 13th Gen i9, and a naturally aspirated V10. And believe it or not, this is my first time seeing a 4090 in person. Until now, I've only ever seen it on the internet. Just like you and a real woman. As a repair shop, I never really see high-end desktops like this. It's mostly shitty pre-builts with saggy GPUs that begin with the word I buy power. And it's always a pleasure compared to the dust-filled shitboxes that normally occupy my shop. But jokes aside, it doesn't matter how expensive your stuff is because it's your stuff and you earned it. There will always be someone with a better computer or a better car. So just appreciate what you have.
Holy shit, it's 9/11? Holy.
My favorite holiday.
Hi and welcome back to a new video. This year we already had to suffer through two, at least from my side, pretty disappointing CPU launches. Now 900X3D luckily doesn't repeat that. So there are some quite interesting and very important changes compared to the 800X3D.
Oh shit.
Very good
Negev again.
Last week that we should definitely
Bro, he's a menace.
The quick summary is that back on the 7800X3D, you had all the cores on the bottom and then you had a cache on top. So all the heat that was coming from the cores had to go through the cache and then to the indium, to the heat spreader and to the cooler. And on the 9800X3D, this is the opposite. So they put the cache on the bottom, put the cores on top, and this drastically improved temperatures. And not only that, 9800X3D now also allows overclocking. From my side, that is absolutely amazing, and that was what I was missing on the 5800X3D and on the 7800X3D.
Oh my
With the passion for IT and technical expertise,
loser
Hetzner offers innovative solutions for complex requirements worldwide.
Do we rush?
Through
Let's
its
just let
own
him
state-of-the-art
push.
data
These guys are
centers in
fucking
Falkenstein,
bots.
Nuremberg and Helsinki, as well as cloud
guys are
locations
not
in the
good.
US and Singapore, Hetzner prioritizes efficiency above all. The server auction offers both standardized systems and previously customized setups, all with no minimum contract term and no setup fee. Thanks to the server auction, hardware is reused sustainably, providing highly affordable systems while benefiting the environment. Find out all details for the server auction in the link below. AMD did not only flip the cache, but they also changed the complete layout. We had the CCD on the bottom with the cores on the 7800X3D, then the 3DV cache in the center, and then we had two placeholder tiles next to it, made from silicon, but basically placeholders and dead silicon without any circuit inside. But now on the 9800X3D, it is one large cache chip on the bottom, so no longer three pieces, and on top they put the CCDs with the cores. And also in between, they changed the thermal resistance by improving layers in between the CPU. That's already what you saw with Zen 5 in general, that it was running much colder, and all those improvements are inside the 9800X3D. So we're talking about 20 to maybe 30 degrees Celsius improvement over the previous generation. You can also really see that if you compare the 7950X3D that has one CCD with a 3DV cache and one without, you could always see like 20 to 30 degrees Celsius difference between both of the chips.
Bro, there's no fucking way! Are you kidding me?
We did some overclocking testing last year when I was visiting the Asus HQ with the 7800X3D. It was not unlocked or not meant to be overclocked, but we had some unlocked BIOS from Asus where we could bypass some voltage limits, and that's what we did. And increasing the voltage led to the CPU failure. I think it was just about 200 millivolt voltage increase, and yet the CPU died quite quickly. So I was like, okay, there is definitely some truth to it that the 7800X was fragile when it came to overclocking. Well, maybe not overclocking in terms of increasing the clock, but definitely raising the voltage, which was definitely also increasing the temperature. And that's one of the biggest improvements that AMD did on the 9800X 3D, which allows them to enable overclocking and make sure that it's also safe. AMD also said that it was not the cache that was so fragile and that it was dying, but it was because the cores underneath just couldn't stay. Due to those mechanical limits, it was always that the 7800X 3D couldn't clock as high because it was just purely voltage and temperature limited, which is no longer the case here. And also you have to keep in mind that on the 9800X 3D, because the cache sits below and the core is on top, the core CCD itself is thinner than what you would see, for example, on the 9700X, because both share overall the same die height. But the 9800X 3D, because it's stacked, is lower for the CCD die height of the cores themselves, which typically means that it should improve the temperature even further. And all of this should be quite exciting. And the result of all those changes you can see here in Cinebench 23, where the 9800X 3D beats the 7800X 3D by 25% in performance. However, it also consumes 50% more power, so it's much more power hungry. This means that overall the 7800X 3D here stays more efficient, but is also quite a bit slower. Of course, if we compare it to any of the 16-core CPUs like the 9950X or even 285K, 9800X 3D doesn't really have a chance here, but that was also expected and probably changes once the 9950X 3D arrives. I also took your feedback from the previous video where we were testing 85K at higher memory speed. We were testing with 8800 megatransfers, and now I retested the 285K at 6030. So all of the configurations of all CPUs are performed at the same memory speed because you guys requested that. However, you have to keep in mind that Intel still has the better memory controller that allows for higher speed. So that means that it's a slight disadvantage for Intel. The 9800X 3D definitely benefits from the higher core clock, as you can see here in multi-core threaded workloads such as HWBot.
Y'all want to just rush A real quick?
We see a strong performance improvement over the 7800X 3D.
I'm nading Squeaky and I'm gonna molly Mini.
While the power consumption only increased by 21%. In this application, this is a pretty awesome ratio. But again, obviously, it doesn't have to. For example, the 9950X is much faster and also quite efficient, while the 285K from Intel is the fastest CPU in this benchmark.
Coming Mini.
Finally, going over to the gaming benchmarks, and as you look at my charts, you can see the average FPS in yellow, the 1% low FPS in the darker yellow, and the average power consumption in blue. It's always the average over 50 minutes, so it's a very realistic power consumption value. It is not a short power consumption value. In Remnant, the 9800X 3D just beats everything and is really efficient. With 60 watt under load, I don't really see any difference to the 800X 3D. The minimum FPS or the 1% lows is 82 FPS, while the average FPS increased by 7%. Both Intel 285K and 4900KS have absolutely no chance. Cyberpunk could observe a slight increase of power consumption by 17 watt, but it's overall, at least from my perspective, still in a very good and efficient area. I couldn't really observe an increase in the 1% low FPS, however the average FPS increased by 11%. Now if we compare the 9800X 3D with the Intel 285K, it is 30% faster.
We're not
on
tying
average,
these motherfuckers,
so that
we're
is
winning
really
in overtime.
In Valorant we can see a performance increase over the 7800X 3D by about 3 to 6%, looking at the 1% low, and the average FPS, and here the power consumption was even lower than on the 7800X 3D, which makes this overall the most efficient. 14900KS is a little bit faster here when it comes to the average FPS, however it is slower when you look at those. He's pushing. Good trade. The high FPS shooter Counter-Strike 2 also benefits drastically from the 9800X 3D. The performance increase versus the previous gen is about 6 to 8%, which matches exactly what AMD was promising or advertising so far with the 9800X 3D. Now here, again, as I told you, I retested the 285K with the slower memory, and this definitely didn't help. Again, it's extremely slow, especially with the 6000 C30, so that didn't help at all.
Let's take it outside,
In Assassin's Creed Mirage, I could observe the highest jump in performance, and it's absolutely impressive how much performance Zen 5 architecture in combination with 3D cache delivers. We are talking about 20 to 30% performance increase, and with this, the 9800X 3D even beats the 4900 KS, which was previously always the fastest CPU for me in this game or scenario. I'm only testing 5 games here, so that's not the big picture. I think you would have to look at 10 to 20 games probably to see what the real improvement of the CPU versus the 7800X would be. But at least for me, in my scenarios, it's a plus in performance, while 4% in power consumption, which I think is a very healthy ratio. Very interesting, makes the CPU very fast, very efficient still.
He's going lobby.
And we didn't even talk about overclocking yet, which we will still do. But before we get to that, we will jump into Cinebench and also just looking into a game that you can get a feeling of how this CPU performs in the real world. In Cinebench, you should see temperatures with my CPU mid-70s to approach Celsius, lower than what we saw on
Navi 31 is not selling. It's very bad. People know it's 2 years old. They know the new generation's around the corner. They will wait another month if you don't do the official price drop, or 2 months or 3 months. They can wait that long. I don't think these stealth price drops, if this is all they end up doing, is enough. You need to get the news out that there's official price drops. Like when Sony announced the PS3's $299. What if all they did is give rebates to Best Buy to sell the PS3 for $299, but never announce that it's dropped in price? That's so dumb. You want to get the marketing that you have a price drop if you're losing money anyways.
I'm gonna kill myself.
Farted on. Yay! Yay! See, this is how we should be winning these rounds. These guys are fucking bots.
Yeah, I know. I'm just fucking with them. I've been dicking around from round 1, bro.
Fucking around too much.
But we fucked around a little too hard. We let these guys come back from 7-zip. 7-zip.
Let's go. Move.
And then 11-4. Fuck. Oh shit.
Oh, it's so white, dude. I know where it was.
Throwing up Molotov. Stay right here is where we end this.
Straight Douglasin on him.
Here we go.
Yo, they're on ramp. They're going B, I think.
Yeah.
Planting.
Oh!
Sheesh. Get him. Hooray! Hooray! Holy fuck. Outside and up.
Why did he jump?
Outside with an op.
One's log.
Oh, no, he's on site. One. I hit him. A side. Bomb's outside, red.
Op red.
Locker time is over. Yes, indeed.
Throwing fire. Throwing fire. Throwing a grenade. Incendiary. Fire in the hole.
Oh, he's dinked. Mini.
Hey?
Aw. Going down vents.
Flash.
One dart.
Control.
Stairs on the
Control room last.
Just smoke and defuse. Smoke and defuse. It's not even planning for him, bro.
I'm defusing the bomb.
Holy shit, we fucking lost!
Bro. Oh, I still got 50 points.
definitely raising the voltage, which was definitely also increasing the temperature. And that's one of the biggest improvements that AMD did on the 9800X 3D, which allowed them to enable overclocking and make sure that it's also safe. AMD also said that it was not the cache that was so fragile and that it was dying, but it was because the cores underneath just couldn't stay as cold. Due to those mechanical limits, it was always that the 7800X 3D couldn't clock as high because it was just purely voltage and temperature limited, which is no longer the case here. And also you have to keep in mind that on the 9800X 3D, because the cache sits below and the core is on top, the core CCD itself is thinner than what you would see, for example, on the 9700X, because both share overall the same die height. But the 9800X 3D, because it's stacked, is lower for the CCD die height of the cores themselves, which typically means that it should improve the temperature even further. And all of this should be quite exciting for overclocking. And the result of all those changes you can see here in Cinebench R23, where the 9800X 3D beats the 7800X 3D by 25% in performance. However, it also consumes 50% more power, so it's much more power hungry. This means that overall the 7800X 3D here stays more efficient, but is also quite a bit slower. Of course, if we compare it to any of the 16-core CPUs like the 9950X or the 85K, the 9800X 3D doesn't really have a chance here, but that was also expected, and probably changes once the 9950X 3D. I also took your feedback from the previous video where we were testing the 85K at higher memory speed.
I didn't know how.
And now I retested the 285K at 6030, so all of the configurations of all CPUs are performed at the same memory speed because you guys requested that. However, you have to keep in mind that Intel still has a better memory controller that allows for higher speed, so that means that it's a slight disadvantage for Intel. The 9800X 3D definitely benefits from the higher core count, as you can see here in multi-core threaded workloads such as HWBot X265. We see a strong performance improvement over the 7800X 3D of 35%, while the power consumption only increased by 20%. So this application, this is a pretty awesome ratio. But again, obviously doesn't have a chance versus the high core count CPUs. For example, the 9950X is much faster and also quite efficient, while the 285K from Intel is the fastest CPU in this benchmark. Finally, going over to the gaming benchmarks, and as usual in my charts, you can see the average FPS in yellow, the 1% low FPS in the darker yellow, and the average power consumption in blue. It's always the average over 50 minutes, so it's a very realistic power consumption value. It is not a peak power consumption value.
Yeah,
in
random,
the 9800X 3D just eats everything and is really efficient. With 60 watt on the load, I don't really see any difference to the 7800X 3D. The minimum FPS or the 1% lows increased by 12% to 82 FPS, while the average FPS increased by 7%. Both Intel 285K and 4900KS had absolutely no chance. In Cyberpunk, I could observe a slight increase of power consumption by 7 watt, but it's overall, from my perspective, still an increase in the 1% low FPS. However, the average FPS increased by 7%. Now, if we compare the 9800X 3D with the 85K, it is 30% faster on the average FPS, so that is really a lot. In Valorant, we can see a performance increase over the 7800X 3D by about 3 to 6%, looking at the 1% low and the average FPS, and here the power consumption was even lower than on the 7800X 3D, which makes this CPU overall the most efficient. The 14900KS is a little bit faster here when it comes to the average FPS, however it is slower when you look at the 1% lows, which are just more important in the end. The high FPS shooter Counter-Strike 2 also benefits drastically from the 9800X 3D. The performance increase versus the previous gen is about 6 to 8%, which matches exactly what AMD was promising or advertising so far with the 9800X 3D. Now here, again, as I told you, I retested the 285K with slower memory, and this definitely didn't help. Again, it's extremely slow, especially with the 6000 C30, so that didn't help at all. In Assassin's Creed Mirage, I could observe the highest jump in performance, and it's absolutely impressive how much performance Zen 5 architecture in combination with 3DV cache delivers. we are talking about 20 to 30% performance increase, and with this, the 9800X 3D even beats the 4900KS, which was previously always the fastest CPU for me in this game or scenario. I'm only testing 5 games here, so that's not the big picture. I think you would have to look at 10 to 20 games probably to see what the real improvement of the CPU versus the 7800X 3D, but at least for me, in my scenarios, it's plus performance, while the CPU increases 4% in power consumption, which I think is a very healthy ratio and very interesting. Makes the CPU very fast, very efficient still. And we didn't even talk about overclocking yet, which we will still do. Before we get to that, we will jump into Cinebench and also just looking into a game that gives a feeling of how this CPU performs. On Cinebench, you should see temperatures, at least with my CPU, mid-70s to approaching 80 degrees Celsius, which is a lot lower than what you saw on the 7800X 3D, and that is while the CPU is clocking a lot higher. As you can see, it's above 5.2 GHz across all of the 8 cores, which is the explanation why the CPU just performs so much faster in Cinebench or high multi-core loads versus the 7800X 3D. Power consumption, as you can see, 135 to 140 watt, and in this case 22,000. In the gaming scenarios, I could observe the same kind of clock as with high multi-threading such as Cinebench, so again 5225 MHz on the cores that are loaded, as you can see. Temperature is pretty solid. I could see between 50 and 60 degrees Celsius. The highest temperature I could see in Assassin's Creed Mirage with about 60 degrees Celsius, which is still pretty nice with a 360 AIO and gives us a lot of headroom for overclocking, and we will even do living obviously in direct eye, so that should give us even more headroom. But first, quick cat break.
You're better, dude. Oh, I almost died from the fall there. I could drop one. I can drop as well. Anyone need one? Yeah, can I have one? Thank you. I like this.
I hope you could relax a bit, and I have your back. So stock condition was about 51 degrees Celsius under gaming scenario load. In Cinebench we saw up to 74 to 76 degrees Celsius under load, while the core voltage stock was between 1.13 and 1.18 volt. That is the stock condition, and now we're going to delete the CPU. Deleting of the 9800X 3D is very similar to all the other Ryzen 9000 or also Ryzen 7000 CPUs. The Ryzen 7000 teledimate is still compatible, and I already showed this already, plenty of times, so I don't have to show all this process over and over again.
Fuck off. Let's go. Nice try, nice try.
I'm currently waiting for the liquid metal to take off the rest of the indium, and just a note, I had to move the slider back and forth 39 times to remove the IHS. Sunho, the in-house overclocker from Asus, also already did this, and he had to do it over 80 times, so there seems to be quite a big tolerance in terms of how often you have to shift it until the IHS comes loose. I'm not sure if I would recommend what I'm doing. I did it so far on 2 CPUs and both survived to polish this with thermal paste and Dremel. It seems to be working, but I'm not sure if it's sustainable or if it might actually kill a CPU.
There's a McGalil. There's a Galil behind you.
Definitely a big difference before and after. I always do it by hand usually, and I'm, as I said before, not sure if this is smart or not. I'm just trying this. I will keep you updated if it works.
Ah, I heard that puck.
Nah, dude, mine aren't that tight.
I gotta save.
But so far it seems to be okay. The reason I'm doing this is to get rid of all the remaining particles, such as gold, that will have interactions with the liquid metal and might negatively impact aging especially. So I will now apply a fresh layer of liquid metal and then put the micro direct depth lower. So now we place the cooler on top. So let's do a check.
One more still be with the...
CPU is definitely alive. I will not do the overclock for now. We will first compare the temperatures in the stock condition. We're looking at Cinebench first, check if the clock is still the same, 50 to 25 megahertz, that is in line. Look at those temperatures. The magic between what AMD did with the CPU and DirectEye is just incredible. We can see like 45 to 50 degrees Celsius under the CPU. That is just absolutely crazy low temperature on the CPU. That's a reduction of about 15 to 20 degrees Celsius on the CPU, which then also causes the CPU to drastically consume less power. I would say about 15 to 20 watt less. We went from closing in on 140 to maybe like 120 to 125 watt under load. And yeah, that should definitely help us when we will soon touch the CPU for overclocking. Of course, the load in gaming is a lot less. It's about half than what we saw in Cinebench. That's also why the temperature benefit is only about half. We went down to 40 degrees Celsius, which I think is still great and should give us a lot of headroom for overclocking. With the quick and manual overclock, I can push the cores to 5.6 and maintaining, I would say, a moderate voltage. Stock I could see up to 1.18. Now we're running 1.28, so it's 100 millivolts increase. And that was enough for 25,200 points roughly. We still have to run it 5 times and take the average. Under load, it's still 5.6 years across all the cores. And the temperatures, I would say, are pretty nice. They're still in the region of about 60 degrees Celsius, which should be very healthy, even though we massively overclocked the CPU with about 100 millivolts voltage increase. And that leads to also increasing the CPU packet power, but I would also say that this is still in an okay region. Stock we saw about 135 to 130. Now we're at about even with 400 megahertz increase, those values look very healthy. Now done correctly, you can see a performance increase to 25,200 points. That is an extra of 10%, while the power consumption increased by 16%, which is a bit more, but I would say that is still in a healthy ratio, so you can get an extra of 10% performance for multi-threading, and the temperatures, I would say, are still very good and healthy for daily use. Again, also in gaming, temperatures are still very good. We see still below 50 degrees Celsius, clock is stable at 5.6, and that was just an overclock of like 1 hour. Like really sloppy, no attention to detail. I'm not sure what it could do with like TVO and curve optimizer and all that, but it just shows how much potential the 9800X 3D has. In Assassin's Creed Mirage, the 9800X 3D with its 5.6 GHz all-core overclock gains another 5 to 7% in performance. It boosts the minimum FPS to 125 and average to 204, making it by far the fastest CPU in this test and all of my benchmarks. But it also increased the power consumption quite a bit to 90 watt under load, which I think is still quite nice. And it's still less than the new Intel 285K. The 9800X 3D combines everything that I was wishing for in terms of the CPU. It improved everything from the 5800X 3D to the 7800X 3D that I was missing in terms of modifications, overclocking. Everything is possible on the 9800X 3D, and it also performs really good in the stock condition. It's also very, very cold in the stock condition. So overall, I would say pretty awesome CPU. I had a very good experience with it, no trouble whatsoever. Thank you for unlocking this. That made me really happy. I'm not sure how much sense it makes if you have a 7800X 3D and you are thinking to upgrade. Probably doesn't make a lot of sense, but if you're planning to upgrade from an older CPU, I think this could be a very, very good choice, but it will also depend on the price, which I currently don't know. So that's something you have to check locally, obviously, but just from a technical perspective, that is a pretty awesome CPU. Thanks AMD, and thanks for tuning in. See you next time. Bye bye.
Ladies and gentlemen, you read that title right, because in my hands is the brand new Ryzen 7 9800 X3D, and today we're going to build the absolute fastest gaming PC you can in 2024. I've been excited about this for ages, and obviously this has been a bit of a year of CPU disappointments. We've had release after release, but nothing has actually beaten what came before it. And surely, this can't be worse than the old fastest gaming CPUs. This has to be better. So throughout this video, we've grabbed an RTX 4090, and we're going to be building this pretty epic little gaming PC. But don't worry, we're going to give you those all-important gameplay benchmark numbers at the end of the video, so you can actually see exactly how this performs in the latest and greatest games, and we'll be showing you how this performs against every other CPU, well, not ever, but certainly quite a lot of them. It's going to be a really exciting video, and I can't wait to bring you along for the ride. But after a short word from this video's sponsor, MSI's new Core Liquid I series have arrived, bringing awesome all-in-one cooling to the masses. Thanks to the pre-installed fan, just 2 cables to connect for the radiator block, and a uni bracket for both AMD and Intel, installation is a breeze. The cooler looks awesome too, with its eye-catching dual-sided infinity mirror and RGB fans glowing up your rig, in addition to the awesome CPU cooling performance. Learn more about this incredible all-in-one today with a link down below. Rightio then everyone, I think it is time to get this show on the road, and a couple of things really to note. The first one obviously being that this is hopefully going to be the absolute fastest gaming CPU. We're filming this a week before launch, but the way we're going to do this is to make sure by the time you see this, everything's up to date. So we'll discover how good this is throughout the video, and then as I say, Carl will actually give you all of those proper benchmark numbers from weeks of testing, so you will know how this compares. But there's a few things actually that have changed this time around. The main one really being that the 3D V-cache is now actually underneath the CCD chiplets rather than before it was on top, and essentially this should give you better clock speeds. You can now actually overclock this, and there's also going to be a new mode in the BIOSes as well that are going to be called different things. I think on this it's called Turbo Game Mode, that should actually give you like a one-click, even better gaming performance than you did before. But essentially this is almost certainly going to be the absolute best of the best. If it can do around about 8 to 10% average frame rates improvements, I'm going to be a happy boy. I mean, let's be honest, the bar's not exactly been set all that high by Intel Core Ultra's negative improvements. Of course, it is absolutely worth noting that you don't actually need a new motherboard like this one if you were coming from an older generation AM5 board. So if you've already upgraded to P650E, maybe you've got a Ryzen 7700, or even the older X3D chip, then you can use that motherboard. Make sure you obviously update the BIOS and then carry it forward. So if you're going to be building from scratch, you might be interested in one of the new X870 or X870E motherboards. This one is the Crosshair Hero from ASUS ROG, and you know, it's not going to be for everyone, let's be honest. This is going to be a very overbuilt motherboard. It's going to be great for overclocking. It's got loads of platform features, extra PCI Generation 5, you've got 2 USB 4s on this. As we give this a spin round so you can see this properly though, I will shout out the fact that you do actually get 2 USB 3s on this motherboard, which is going to be very useful if you're going for a high-end case, because actually most motherboards don't have this, so this is definitely a good feature, alongside things like the very large VRMs. You've got a large heatsink via PCI Gen 5, not that PCI Gen 5 is exactly necessary at the moment, but certainly very future-proof. Good heatsink here, and then I imagine taking these off, you'll find that you do have an additional 4 M.2 slots. These 2 are Generation 5 alongside this top one, and then these 2 are Gen 4. But I think the first thing to do is going to be to properly christen this motherboard with a brand new CPU. And I will be honest to say that if you're expecting something crazy different about this, you are going to be very disappointed in terms of aesthetics and the way it looks, because if you took that text off, you would never know this was any different to any of the others. But I mean, let's be honest, that's pretty standard for a CPU. It's quite interesting by design. So we'll drop this down into position, lower it down, and click it into position. Say that for Rob. Yes, I've made that joke loads of times before, but get over it. It's still funny. That's so and then rather interestingly, something that is a little bit different this time around is that AMD have actually provided me with an SSD, and they said
you probably won't need it, but in case you do, here it is.
Which leads me to think that there are probably some incompatibility issues somewhere within Windows. But to be fair to AMD, this exact same thing happened with Intel Core Ultra, so I think this is probably more a Microsoft thing, but we'll reserve judgment. And I must admit that usually when someone sends me something like this, I'm always a little bit suspicious and I almost deliberately don't use it. But I think in this particular instance, it does make sense, because to be honest, I probably would use a 990 anyway, and I always have a copy of Windows preloaded on my SSD. anyway, and because I had so many issues with Core Ultra, I just want this to work. Oh, PC-centric, no, you're cheating. AMD have got some funny code that they've put on that, and it's not fair.
That's what a driver is.
All the Cinebench scores come back at like 100,000. And then actually, the final item in our AMD review kit here today is a copy of some RAM. Is some RAM. This is a 32GB kit from G.Skill Trident V Neo RGB. But interestingly, this one is actually CL28, so very low latency. Oh, look. Is that white? I thought it was going to be silver. This doesn't really go with my theme. What have you done to me? No, that doesn't look quite right, does it? I'm almost tempted to use other RAM because that really doesn't look good, does it? I believe this one is C30. Ah, there you are, that's better. Corsair Vengeance to the rescue. But with our board complete, I think it is now time to move on. Sound like Austin Powers again then. Just want to get things moving. Well, I do, to be fair, because I want to talk about our chassis. And this is actually the Langcool 207. And I was really intrigued when I first saw this at Computex earlier today, because this isn't even a particularly expensive chassis, around about £80 or dollars or so. Build quality is pretty good. It's clearly not as good as like the more expensive cases, but it's not far off. This does not feel like a cheap chassis at all. But the main difference really with this, one of the ways they actually cut costs is to make the glass smaller, not thinner, like that, that's good. But one of the main differences with this is actually that this is a micro ATX case in size, but it's one that can accommodate full-size ATX boards, which I really like because most people don't need an ATX chassis, but obviously most boards are ATX, so you don't always have the option. So I like the fact that Lee and Lee are kind of thinking a little bit, well, I guess, inside the box. Oh, and I see how they've done that. They've actually moved the power supply, because look, it doesn't go down the bottom anymore. You've actually got a couple of fans here that will give you better ventilation for your GPU, and then this bit is a little bit thinner, but then your power supply, I believe, goes here. So you can't fit like 360 rads or anything at the front, but bear in mind most people want to use the top anyway, and you've still got 140 fans on the front, so loads of ventilation. This really could be the best of both worlds. But anyway, moving around the back, we can see it's a little bit more basic here. I'd definitely like there to be more stuff, I suppose. You do have a little channel here at the top. It doesn't look like you've got any hubs for ARGB, and my main worry is actually that this is quite thin. There's not really that much gap between, well, this plate here and then the side panel, which is fine if you're only routing your cables through this chamber, but most of us don't, and if you're going to be using like a separate hub or something for your fans, then obviously this could potentially cause an issue. Oh, and because I always forget to do this, here's the top of the chassis. It's mesh, and you do have 2 USB 3s and then 1 USB 3. But actually, let's get this facing down on the desk. I should just be able to drop this into position. All of our case cables look to be pretty standard, to be honest with you. You've got USB-C, USB 3, a couple of fan headers, your front panel, then you've got HD audio, and then addressable RGB. But of course, now comes the bit that I've been dreading, not only because it's a radiator, but because this is a smaller chassis, and large radiators and small cases are usually difficult. So let's move our 4090 and power supply for a second and actually see what we're dealing with. And I think this one is actually reviewed quite well. We've done a couple of pre-rolls with this on the channel. We have the IQ Link Titan 360 RX. So these use the RX fans. They're very good in terms of performance. I don't think they're the absolute best looking fans, but they're pretty decent really. I'm being very nitpicky. But Corsair seems to have got the memo and actually pre-installed the fans, which makes my life a whole lot easier. And they have also completely redesigned the pump as well. So this should hopefully be better performing and also potentially a little bit quieter. I guess it depends on the settings and things that you're going to use. It doesn't look like there's any rails or anything, just comes off completely toollessly, and then yeah, the old-fashioned way of just screwing it into the top of the chassis, and it is slightly offset as well. I think you're going to have a much better time if you use 240 or a 360 over a 280, and you can still actually access all of your ports, which is nice. But having said that, I will still make my life easier by plugging our power cables in now. So the power supply that we're using, I'd probably go for 1000 watt with this one, to be honest with you, but 850 is going to be fine. The reason I say that is because if you did want to upgrade to something like a 5090 in the future, which you probably do if you are building this sort of gaming PC, then this might actually be cutting it a bit fine / not work. Obviously it depends what the 5090 is going to be, but that's the benefit of going for a power supply with a little bit of headroom. Obviously gives you some headroom. But let's find our CPU cable. We'll get these connected now, and then the whole thing should line up and then screw into position. Then I'm going to remove the default AM5 mount, carefully remove our Intel pump bracket, then I can replace that with the AMD one to just line up, screw down, And of course, because this uses Corsair IQ Link, getting this cabled should be pretty easy. And actually, if you did want to add or swap out any of the other fans, granted they are expensive, but if you did want to add any extra...
Remy, unique...
Just stop right now. Yeah, load out. Excuse me. What the fuck just happened there? I know someone's there. They're trying to bait the tag. Oh my god, I shot through the door. That was completely by fucking accident. Listen, slide backwards on your ass. Because that's very realistic. Listen, man, it's like I'm oiled up. Listen. When two men with shitty aim go toe to toe.
Get me eyes in the sky.
No one should have been proud in that moment right there. Sorry. You know what? Just shoot me in the ass while I'm sliding. And it stayed at 60, man. This is integrated graphics. Graphics, fuck me. This is ridiculous. Oh my god. I'm a fucking horrible human being. Let's go. Listen. Fuck your assault pack. Oh, you are on my team. You don't deserve bullets. This is getting out of control. Oh! Whoa! Wow. Holy fuck. He was trying to beat me with his shotgun cock. Alright. Ah, yeah, I just killed you, motherfucker. You just killed my friend. I never talked to the guy. You're not really friends. From the hip! What do you know about my hips? Oh my god. Keanu Reeves just fisted me. My fist is in your ass. Whoa. Reload that clip after shooting one bullet, champ.
Sending flashback.
Who is this dude dipped in ketchup? What the fuck is going on? He's a pain in the ass. Fuck off. Was that him? No, there he is. Why is Master Chief after me? What the fuck is going on? You know what? You're fine. You're on my team. It's how real life works. Bullets only care about teams. You're on the same team. The bullet will go right through you. No problem. Fuck. I'm gonna eat your agent ass. Give me those fucking tags. I usually don't care about getting the tags, but he makes me emotional. Fuck off, man. Like, I seriously don't usually give a fuck, but that clown, he keeps on. Well, what just shot me? I have to see the replay of that. Oh, well, I just got shot in the ass. I do that to everybody. Whatever. Sorry, dude. I just shot your nipple. You're fine. Where the fuck do I go? Ah! Die, bitch! Oh. Ketchup, motherfucker. Oh, mustard. Well, I hear them vibrating. That usually means enemies. It's too quiet. I'm gonna get fucked in the ass in like 20 seconds. There's no way. I got the spring mine. Oh. Where you at, motherfucker? I just saw you.
Spring mine.
Spring. Like, watch out for those spring mines. They'll just spring right into you. Fuck you, you ketchup bastard. Fuck off. You thought you had me, but you didn't, bitch. I'm holding a hot grenade. What am I doing? Why did I just throw that grenade? I have no idea. This is Black Ops 6, running smoothly on integrated graphics. M780, 780M from AMD. I can't talk. Good night.